Good evening, everyone. My name is Arthur Doyle, Chair of the Milton Select Board, and we welcome you to the Select Board meeting of Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. This meeting is being conducted pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This act, signed by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021, includes an extension of the remote meeting provisions. As a result, all votes will be taken by roll call during this meeting. At this time, I would like to invite the other members of the Select Board to introduce themselves, recognizing that Secretary Wells will not be able to participate in this meeting. Mr. Zulus?
Mike Zulus, Vice Chair.
Ms. Bradley?
Erin Bradley, member.
Ms. Musto?
Hi, Roxanne Musto, member.
Thank you, one and all. I would like to have other members introduce themselves from the staff side. Paige, are you able to do so? Paige Eppolito?
Paige Eppolito, Assistant Town Administrator, HR Director. And I'm filling in for Anne Marie tonight.
Karen?
I'm Karen Pavel, Finance Director, Town Accountant, and I'll be here for a few items on the agenda. If people have questions, I'm here.
Suzanne?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Bridges. I'm the licensing agent. I am filling in for Lynn DiNapoli, who is unable to attend this evening.
We have Town Council Kevin Freitag with us. Kevin?
Good evening, everyone. Kevin Freitag from the Office of Town Council.
And we have the honor of having Town Moderator Bob Hiss with us. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Would you all join in, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 3 is public comment. Let's see if there's any at this time. We have Branch Lang.
Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you, Branch.
Okay, I'll try to be brief because looking at your agenda, I can see that you folks have a big night ahead of you. First of all, I want to welcome Erin and Roxanne. Congratulations on all the hard work you did and all your opponents. And thank you for being willing to spend your evenings and days and nights and Saturdays on working on this stuff. Background, do you folks have a picture that we sent you of a proposal? Okay, I'll speak a little bit, and Mike and Arthur will know more about this because they were at a meeting, I think it was probably in August, when we talked about having lost the 236-inch caliper trees in front of the town green through disease. And Chase and I met with the board and we talked about the fact that we would replace those trees. Well, since that happened, John Corey and the Shade Tree Advisory Committee has put together a project for which they have raised in excess of $90,000 to replace 360 trees throughout town with the help of Chase and his able crew. So when I first looked at those trees that we were going to replace, I came to the conclusion that those trees were placed when the original town hall was built, and they were in somewhat inappropriate locations because they were overcasting the gazebo, and we came up with a better plan where we would move the trees away from the gazebo and put them closer to the sidewalk and thereby framing the gazebo and making for a much better plan. So in any event, the John and the STAC would like to plant 2 white oak trees in those locations as cited on that plan. And that is the present proposal. Let me see. And lastly, I don't think it's a votable item. I think this is an issue for you folks and Anne Marie to talk about rather than spending a great deal of your time and votes, et cetera. But lastly, I want to give a shout out to the people who made the whole project happen. John Corey, the STAC committee, Alan in the engineering office, Mira and the board for their ongoing support, and of course Chase, who is the go-to guy. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. And as I indicated, I wanted to make this brief and try to do something that is going to be a long-term benefit for the town and something that you and your great-great-grandchildren would be proud.
Thank you, Branch. We appreciate both your advocacy and your enthusiasm. Comments or questions from members of the board, please?
I just have one thing.
Please, Roxanne.
Hi, I was just going to say, I think that's wonderful. I did have a quick question. With the funds that we have, what is the process to putting trees elsewhere in the town? Can you explain that?
Well, there's a couple of methods. One is the town essentially, to use a ballpark figure, loses 150 trees a year. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of methods. One is the removal and replacement plan to put back trees that are removed. And the other is there is a place on the DPW website for residents to request trees. One of the problems with tree replacement that's happened over the years is that the budget has not, the DPW budget has not had enough money to do the appropriate job. And I have talked in the past with selectmen and warrant committee people, and they're all in agreement that we should have a line item, a voted line item in the DPW budget, and the suggestion is $30,000. We've been replacing trees with the through the grace of our guardian angel, who contributed $50,000 to this little project that we're doing, or 40 or 50, whatever it is. But the tree planting has been done with funds from the capital account. And this tree replacement, that's not really a capital item. A capital item is something that has a lifespan, and like a truck or a building or something like that. And seeing that capitalizes is really, really not appropriate. So in any event, that's going to be an item for you guys to think about going forward in next year's budget, because we would really like to stick one line under the public works shown on the warrant for $30,000 approximately to replace trees. So does that answer your question? I'm sorry, I got into a little bit of a commentary there.
No, I think it does. And it's good for people watching to know what the process is in terms of if they wanted to request that they wanted a tree, and if it's possible, like what the process is. So I appreciate that.
Oh, no, we absolutely want them to apply. That's Chase. Chase is a great advocate in this stuff. He loves to plant trees, and the rest of that committee, as you probably all know, is they constantly were working on it.
Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you, Branch. And the choice of a white oak is outstanding.
From 617-314-8577.
Sorry, wait a minute. Go ahead. That's a spam call.
We never get those, Branch.
Right for the telephone. Sorry, go ahead, Arthur.
Just wanted to recognize the excellent selection of the white oak. It's one of the most durable trees that we could have, a New England standout, and also to acknowledge your long and outstanding service as tree warden in the town of Milton. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you. But you know, the motivating force in this whole project has been John Corey and the STAC. So I appreciate your shout out, but that gang really deserves a lot for this particular project.
Well, please pass along our kudos to them as well.
Okay. No other questions? Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Suzanne, for getting that stuff out for me.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Okay. Good night. Have a nice evening, everyone.
You too, Branch. We have a hand raised from Sonia HCN Dupuy, and then Carolyn Kinsella. Can we put out Sonia?
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Doyle, Mr. Zula, and the other members of the Select Board. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I wanted to first thank the board once more for presenting the ability to apply for the ARPA funds. I am with Dave Dupuy Electrical Contractors out of Milton. We have been in the town of Milton since 2009 and are one of the many businesses I'm sure that were negatively affected by COVID-19. I took the opportunity to apply for the ARPA funds last month and submitted it, and I'm hoping that it is on the agenda for this evening and that approval will come through. I'll tell you a little bit about our business. We are a family-owned electrical contracting company. My husband and 4 other employees were working with the company prior to COVID-19. And during the pandemic, our business was basically shut down for just over a year. This severely impacted us in terms of our family finances, as well as those of the people who worked with us. And of course, we had since lost a few employees. Some were selected jobs with other places, and unfortunately, one person passed away due to the illness. I have people in different towns who have been in similar situations as we have, but Milton has done a great job of reaching out. So I did want to say that I am hopeful that the work that has been put into putting forth this program is something that would continue, not just for myself, but for other businesses that may be in this situation. It is a difficulty, and the funds that would be allocated would go to filling the donut hole, the gap that was left during the year plus that we were not able to operate and function in our business. And I hope that that's something that's taken into consideration. And again, that it is something that the board will hopefully vote on and approve this evening. And I wanted to answer any questions that anyone may have had regarding my application.
Thank you for your thoughtful comments. Any questions from members of the board? Again, as was mentioned, this will be on the agenda under the ARPA agenda item. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great evening.
You too. The board will now recognize Milton's Health Director, Carolyn Kinsella.
Good evening, everyone. It's Caroline Kinsella here to give an update on our COVID numbers. So right now, what we're seeing in the health department is we're observing an increase in lab confirmed cases over the past 2 to 3 weeks. We're seeing the Omicron subvariant BA2-12-1, according to the state, they're seeing 70% of the cases under that subvariant and 30% of the cases BA1 and BA2. We've seen an increase even in the last week. Monday, 11 adults, 3 children. Tuesday, 10 adults and 6 children. And today, 23 adults and 5 children. Presently, the 14-day percent positivity in Milton is 4.93, which is up from 4.03, and 104 residents tested COVID positive out of 2,272 tests administered in the last 2 weeks. These are lab tests. Statewide, the 14-day percent positivity is 5.11. And I spoke with Superintendent James Jett, and also got an email from lead nurse Kim Coughlin telling me that the cases were up in the Milton Public Schools. They're doing antigen testing at the schools, which is performed at home. April 28th to May 4th, 6 staff and 33 students. And then May 5th to May 11th, 12 staff and 73 students, which is more than doubled. What we're observing is breakthrough cases of fully vaccinated and boosted residents, predominantly mild to moderate symptoms. And I spoke individually to each Board of Health member over the past week, and it was decided unanimously that conducting a remote town meeting would be the safest option at this time. And that's my report right now. If you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Hearing none, thank you again. And at this time, the chair will recognize Town Moderator Robert Hiss for agenda item number 4. And Caroline provided a perfect segue into Bob's participation this evening.
Thank you, Chair Doyle. Yes, I've been in contact with Ms. Kinsella regarding her opinion about the status of the COVID situation. On Monday night, she informed me of the Board of Health's recommendation for a remote town meeting. So I consulted with Kevin Freitag about the process to make a recommendation to the Select Board, and he can describe that process. But today, Chair Doyle, I sent you a letter and copied in various town officials recommending that we go to a remote town meeting using the same Zoom technology that we have used for the past 6 or 7 town meetings. This would require us to announce a postponement from the May 16 start when we had planned to do an in-person town meeting. We'll have to provide sufficient notice to the citizens and the town meeting members. I believe it's a 10-day notice. We also have some other business to attend to around the warrant. But that's my recommendation to this board, and perhaps, Mr. Freitag, you might describe the official process as laid out by the governor's temporary regulation we're operating under.
Thank you, Moderator Hiss, and welcome, Mr. Freitag.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Select Board. I'm happy to lay out that process. As you're all well aware, in the past years, there have been special acts that have been passed that allow open meetings and town meetings to be held remotely. They were passed initially in 2021, and then they were then continued earlier this year in February. And they permit towns to hold town meetings remotely, which is exactly what Milton has been doing for some time now. And so where we find ourselves now is only slightly different than where we've been for really the past 2 years, in the sense that in those instances, we had requests from the town moderator to hold town meetings remotely before the warrant was actually by the Select Board. And there's a process set forth in the, I believe it's chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022 for just that circumstance. There's also a process set forth when the warrant has already issued, which is where we find ourselves now, which is slightly different than the past few town meetings. That process, though, is not altogether very different from the process that we've engaged in over the past 2 years. Essentially, it starts the same way, which is what has just happened. The moderator makes a request to the Select Board that town meeting be held remotely. That request is in writing and submitted to the Select Board, which is where we are right now. Then the Select Board takes the matter up and decides by vote whether or not to permit the request of the town moderator to have the meeting remotely. And then the warrant having issued already, this board will put together a notice apart from the warrant, which will put town meeting and members of the public on notice that the town meeting will be held. Earlier today, I submitted a draft notice accomplishing just that, I hope, to the chair, and I hope you've had a chance to take a look at it at this point. It does a couple of different things. It lets the town know that there was a town meeting that was scheduled for May 16th, but as a result of a request by the town moderator, which is informed by the Board of Health instance, the Select Board has been asked to conduct the town meeting remotely. And if the board decides to go forward and conduct town meeting remotely, you will select some dates at which time the remote town meeting would place. Those days must be at least 10 days out from the date that the notice is provided to the public. In other words, if you were to provide the notice tomorrow, you'd add 10 days and you'd be around, I think it'd be the 23rd, which would be that basically after the Monday that the town meeting was presently scheduled for on the 16th. I've had some discussions with the moderator, and though it's not our call, we certainly would suggest that to the select board that you might want to push it off a little bit more, maybe towards the end of that week, either the Wednesday or the Thursday, just to allow for a little bit of cushion there on the 10-day notice, which is calendar days, it's not business days. But in any event, once you've selected that date, you then issue the notice, which is combined with the written request of the the written request of the moderator. It's then posted basically everywhere we can find a place to put it. It goes up at town hall in a place where it can be viewed by the public at all times of the day. So this would probably be like on the inside of one of the glass doors or windows, so that anyone at any time, weekday, weekend, can walk up and see where the town meeting will be taking place. That be by Zoom. You then also deliver copies of that notice to all the members of town meeting, as well as the officials of the town, which is what we would, we ordinarily do with any materials related to town meeting. So that's not a heavy lift at this point. And that essentially sets you up to have town meeting remotely. On the back end of your vote, the town clerk, which, by the way, you have to file your notice and your request with the town clerk. You'll know that the town clerk will follow up with the AG's office within 5 days and file a certified copy of the vote of the select board, which is very similar to what the clerk does and has been doing for the past 2 years. So that's the process. And again, where we are right now is you've been given the written request from the moderator, and it's up to the select board now to decide whether or not to hold the town meeting remotely.
That's very thorough and helpful, Mr. Freytag, and all the members of the board should have received a copy of the draft communication that is under the signature of moderator. Yes. Mr. Moderator, since Mr. Freytag mentioned some possible dates, do you want to share some of the additional information that you communicated to me just recently?
Yes, thank you. I consulted with two teams. One, I spoke to Susan Galvin, the town clerk. She wanted until at least Thursday the 26th, which would have been normally beyond our overflow dates. However, it takes about a 7-person team to run one of these remote meetings versus a 2-person team in person. And one of our members, Shane Brandenburg of Milton Cable Access, is on PTO vacation. Won't be returning until it would be the 31st. The 30th would be a bad day, Memorial Day. So May 31 is the first time I'd be able to have him. And he actually is the Zoom administrator that is critical to the whole process. Without him, we'd have to borrow someone like Mike Lynch back from his regular job. So my request would be May 31 now or later, so I can have the whole committee that's been running this for 7 years continue forward.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. May I open the floor to members of the select board for any questions that you may have?
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question.
Please.
Where does this, I don't even know who to direct this to, probably Kevin, but where does this put us for any of the outside articles or the budget articles themselves if we don't even pass them probably, I'm going to say, till mid-June? Does that impact us in any way, shape, or form?
I don't believe so.
Okay. I'm just thinking of home rule petitions or anything else that has to be filed. Does this delay impact that at all?
Well, it would certainly, obviously, it'll postpone the time at which we can file a home rule petition. It would be, however long we delay town meeting, we'd be delayed in order for our turnaround to file a home rule petition. But I don't think it would have any sort of fatal effect on anything related to the budget. But I defer to, perhaps Karen Praval or members of the select board on that item. But not from my perspective, I don't see that it'd be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from board members?
I have a quick one. Sure. I was just wondering, Bob, did you check into the availability of the buildings at this point, that you have some set dates that you would be, how many, what the dates exactly would be?
I have not yet. The Council on Aging is, well, we don't need much of a facility. We really need a fairly large room with a medium-sized room, let's say, with internet access. We've been using either side of the large room at the Council on Aging so far.
Okay.
In general, that's free at night, is my understanding, but we could check perhaps with perhaps Paige or through Anne Marie its availability.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Following up on Mr. Freitag's commentary and the steps that must be taken, we have a related motion to this particular matter. Is there any movement on the motion, Mr. Zulus?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I'm in favor of moving it. Obviously, I think everyone is. I think the only question is whether we decide to start the day after Memorial Day, or we think it better to give people more time. If we think more people will be unavailable that week, if we think people might be taking that week, whether we start the day after Memorial Day, the 31st, or we kick it into the next week. Seems to me that's one judgment that we should try to make. What's the best for the town meeting members if our first possible date is May 31st? And I don't know the answer. It seems to me, just my visceral thought is maybe not better to start that week because we may have people taking a few days after Memorial Day, but that's just a gut.
A point of clarification, Mr. Moderator and Mr. Freitag, at this particular point in time, what we need is authorization for remote meeting due to COVID-19. The dates can be ascertained following that, can they not?
So on that point, the special act actually says that you're supposed to do both things at the same time, that you're supposed to approve the request and then at the same time issue the notice. Now, all I would suggest is that if you're talking about maybe the 31st or that next week, you do have a little bit of time right now. So if you wanted to take a day or two to figure out what the best day might be, you still would be within that 10-day, that 10-day window. Today's the 12th, so even if you were to figure this out by the middle of next week, you could take your vote then to request, and then also set dates for the remote town meeting. And really, any time before the 18th, I think you'd be safe.
Oh, just to explain what was behind my question was the fact that we want to make sure that we don't set dates in place and then have to change them again. Oh, that's a possibility. Mr. Zulus, your hand is raised.
I was just going to say, I do think there's maybe obvious to state it. I think there is a benefit to setting the dates as quickly as possible so people can plan. So if we can do it sooner rather than later, I think there's a benefit to that.
On that note is, if there's agreement among the other board members on that, are there proposed dates? I see Roxanne nodding in the affirmative. Erin, your hand is raised.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm just curious, how many dates, I'm sure moderator has some knowledge of how long he thinks this might go, given how big this warrant is this year and the possible pitfalls of the debate. So I'm just curious about how many dates we're going to have to pick. And that's going to help impact where I vote on that, because I don't want us going too far into June either. So I'm just curious if the moderator has that answer.
I plan for 5. I think we're looking at 4 as a guess. If I could really tell, I'd be in a different profession, but I would plan on 4 nights.
Mr. Moderator, would you have a preference on dates starting with the 31st of May, which was cited a little earlier?
I share Mr. Zulis's thought that people might make it a 4-day weekend. One of the benefits are we still are in school, so graduation hasn't happened yet. So we'll have parents around. I think if we get into that week of the 6th, is graduation around the 5th or so? Is it that, or the 4th? It's usually that first Saturday, I think. We'd have that behind us, so we'd be clear. And I think if the members will recall, in 2020, we moved the annual event to start in June, and we're able to get done by the end of the fiscal year and get the people's business done that night. I think the members are used to starting on a Monday night.
Right.
So if we were to keep with instinct and momentum, June 6th might be the natural date to push it out. My only thought is we'd want to get the word out quickly to members, which we could do perhaps informally if that's appropriate, Mr. Freitag, so that nobody shows up on Monday night, the 16th, while we are finalizing dates and confirming the Council on Aging. But my thought is June 6th, and then we'd be done. For example, if we did 6, 7, 9, 13, 14, there's 5 nights. Perhaps we're done by Monday the 13th, and we still have a couple weeks left in the fiscal year, and it's before all the schools are out and the official start of the school vacation period, when we know we'll lose some families.
So 6, 7, 9. 6th is Monday, 7th is Tuesday, the 9th is Thursday.
Yep.
Then the following Monday, the 13th, and the following day, Tuesday, the 14th.
Yes. I'm happy to do Wednesdays, but I know there are many board meetings that happen on Wednesdays. And in our last special, we had a challenge. We ran out of Zoom meeting rooms on a night of town meeting because too many. So it's easier to avoid Wednesdays. It helps our Zoom administrator have a clean night for all of town meetings, so we don't conflict with any other committee appointments that may also be operating in Zoom when we get out there.
What is the comfort of the board? Mr. Zulus.
That sounds good to me.
Ms. Bradley is in the affirmative.
Yes, she is in the affirmative.
So then do we want to move to allow the town moderator to host the annual town meeting remotely by Zoom due to concerns related to COVID-19 on the dates of June 6, 7, 9, 13, and 14? We're great. Is there such a motion?
I'll second if that's the motion, or do you want me to make the motion?
We'll take you as making the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second to Mr. Zulis' motion?
I'll second it.
Roxanne, thank you for being second. Roll call vote. Mr. Zulis.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you all very much. Moderator Hiss, Mr. Freitag, anything else on this matter?
Well, I should also note that's before the U.S. Open starts in Brookline on the 15th, so it's particularly important. So thank you for accommodating that.
Are you playing this year?
Yeah, I couldn't get a caddy. It's the darndest thing. They're all booked up. So thank you for your time, board.
Thank you very much, both of you. Work well done.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 5, discussion approval, Massachusetts Department of Transportation, Winter Recovery Assistance Program, known as RAP, funding allocation for Milton. And we have with us our DPW Director, Chase Bradley. Can we move him to the panelist list, please? Chase, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And members
Pleasure
of
to
the
have
board,
you with us.
and welcome to the new members. So Chase
You're
Berkeley
going to be
here.
with us for a little while on a few items, I take it. So
Yeah, happy to be here. So yeah, we have some good news to start off with. So we received word a couple of weeks ago from from the state that the Mass DOT will be releasing $100 million in what they call winter recovery assistance money, which is from a functional standpoint, very, very similar to Chapter 90 funds. This is money to repair damages that were caused over the winter months from the plowing. It was probably a little more than average tough winter. The storm from January 29th actually met the criteria for federal FEMA funding. It was such a significant storm, so we're going through that reimbursement process as well to recover some of the plowing funds. So in any event, so the money allocated is $100 million allocated across the state. They're using the same algorithm that they use for Chapter 90. So they look at lane miles and population, and then they distribute the money to all of the towns accordingly. And so Milton will be receiving $324,000 to be used up to June 30th of 2023. So we have a year to spend this money, and it's discretionary spending with a few criteria. So the town can spend it on whichever roads we choose, and that includes sidewalks and things like fixing traffic lights and other appurtenances that may have been damaged. The only real criteria are that we enter into a contract with the state, which sets the mechanism for the reimbursement to get that money back. And the money covers only the roadway work. It doesn't cover ancillary things like police details or anything outside the scope of roadway repair. So this is great news because our fiscal 23 capital paving request was reduced a little bit by $200,000 from the previous several years. So the timing of this extra funding is great. It gets us back to where we were in the past few years and actually a little bit beyond that. We're very happy to receive this. This is, like I said, a great story to tell. So we'll be executing that contract with the state in the next week or 2 weeks to come. And we have access to a couple of different methods of getting this work repaired. So the town, as a town, we bid out roadway patching ourselves individually. So we have a contract in place that we have direct control over. And then we also participate in a regional contract with what's called the Southeast Regional Services Group. So this is a group of about 17 towns on the South Shore that gets us access to much better unit prices. But it just becomes a little competitive with the schedule of the contractors. So we do have a couple of ways to implement this, which is a great thing. The only thing to be cautious of is as of July 1st, we're likely to see some steep price increases because of where we are in the world as far as fuel and supply chain issues. So the quicker we get moving on this, I think the better we will do on the pricing side.
thank you, Mr. Berkeley. Questions from members of the board? Seeing none, we have a motion before us. But anybody?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the funding from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation's Winter Recovery Assistance Program to provide for the town of Milton for roadway assistance.
Thank you, Mr. Zulus. Is there a second, please?
I'll
Ms.
second.
Musto, thank you. For a second, roll call. Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Musto,
Yes.
and Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you, one and all, and thank you again on this, Chase. Our next topic is going to be a discussion and update approval relative to traffic commission and traffic mitigation. Is Tim joining you for this, Chase?
Tim Zawinski, I'm not sure actually. Is he in the audience?
I believe he is.
He's welcome to participate.
Great.
Yep.
Let's bring him in. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us. Chase, would you like to take the lead, please?
Sure. So I think the purpose of tonight's discussion is to talk about how we are going to continue to implement the recommendations of the Traffic Mitigation Committee's report, which outlined several specific recommendations in regards to the traffic commission, the town's traffic commission. So there's two specifically. The first one was that the traffic commission start to have regular meetings. And right about when the report came out, we went into COVID world. And so that kind of disrupted the intention, which was to host either monthly or maybe every 2 months, the standard third Tuesday or third Thursday of the month, so that residents know there's a routine regular meeting that they could come and attend if they had issues come up. So we actually met 2 weeks ago in person for the first time since the pandemic began to kind of get that going. So we had an in-person meeting in the Blue Room. It went very well, no issues there. So we're going to continue that idea going forward as long as the pandemic doesn't make a comeback. So let's hope not. So that's in the works for sure to get us back in person and on a routine schedule. And then the second recommendation was to hire a traffic engineer dedicated to working on traffic issues. So that one probably look for a little guidance from the board on as far as whether or not there's a funding mechanism that we need to create, because the traffic commission historically has never had a budget. It's been, a technical advisory committee where they review issues and offer their expertise on them and then make recommended changes to the traffic rules and orders in town. So in order to have a staff person, or it could be a consultant, we need to figure out where those funds are going to come from. It's a logical place for it to sit in the Public Works Department, but it doesn't need to. It could be wherever we decide to put it. But as far as I know, there isn't anything earmarked in the FY23 budget. We do have in Public Works professional services budgets that encompass that type of work. We hire traffic consultants very frequently for specific projects. And traditionally what we've done is piggyback off those contracts if an issue came up where we wanted some expertise. So for example, we were requested recently to look at Center Street in the area of Fontbonne and whether or not a truck restriction was proper. And so we were able to use a firm that we had on contract already to do that work for us and just kind of absorb it in our professional services line. But to create an actual position or a dedicated role for 12 months a year, well, we should have some dedicated funding for that if we want to do it properly.
Thank you. Members of the board, Mr. Zulus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chase. Let me say that I know Chase and Tim Zerwinski are committed to this, and I know members of the Traffic Commission are, and I think it was the hope and expectation of the Traffic Mitigation Committee that the Traffic Commission, with a new schedule and with more of a proactive, forward-looking charge, if you will, informal charge, really drive some of the recommendations of the Traffic Mitigation Committee. There were recommendations in their report for hotspots throughout town. We've addressed some of them. Some of them have don't block the box areas and some lights, but there were some real areas that call for the creation of working groups to try to address specific hotspots throughout town. And the hope is that with the new schedule and with being opened up after COVID, if you will, that the Traffic Commission can really drive some of those recommendations. And I know they will. And I guess the question for the Traffic Commission will be, what do they need to help drive some of those recommendations? Not a question that necessarily you have an answer to now, but as things proceed, with each of the recommendations. And then on the traffic engineer, I think similarly, the town purchased the beta software, which is traffic modeling software, I think about 2 years ago. But we don't have anyone who really, we have it there, and so we can kind of we can model out what impacts certain activities and activities on the roads will have, but we don't have someone to do it. So I think we'll probably look to the Traffic Commission for the recommendation. Hey, we need a consultant for this project, and hey, before we hire someone full time or maybe part time with another jointly with another town, we could probably look at that. But I think in the short term, the answer may be for as one of these issues is being addressed by the Traffic Commission and the answer is, hey, we need a traffic engineer to help with the analysis here, to use our software. And so can we get a consultant to do that? So those are my thoughts on both of those topics.
Other members of the board, please. So at this time, Chase, you have two recommendations before the select board. One is to return to open meetings, if I heard you correctly. And do you need authorization from the select board to do that?
I don't believe so, because there's a lot of boards and committees that have been meeting in person for quite some time. So we just kind of followed the lead on that.
That's my take as well. And with respect to the traffic engineering position, we're talking about FY23 as a possibility, if I read between the lines correctly.
Yeah, there is one thing I did want to bring up on that. So a few years ago, the town created a revolving fund for traffic mitigation that developers pay into. And the mechanism to remove that is it's under the authority of the town administrator with the approval of the planning board. So there are funds there. I think there's $27,000 in there now, but the idea is that will grow as developments continue to happen. And it could be a funding source that seems to be, right in line with that type of effort. So that's something, for the town administrator or the new town administrator when they come in, that would be, in their purview to execute. So I think we have the funding mechanism there, if that's in agreement that money is well spent doing that, and it's just a matter of putting the logistics together to get it there.
What is the pleasure of the board with respect to this? Erin?
I was just going to say that Chase, from what I'm hearing, you don't need a motion tonight from us. You just need our yay, keep going.
Yes, I mean, it's always great to get a blessing on anything, that we're going to do, but we're not asking for any specific motion tonight. It just was more just, get a consensus that everyone understands what we're trying to do here. A lot of the traffic commission work kind of goes behind the scenes and people don't realize it's happening. A lot of back and forth emails and that type of stuff. So we just want to make sure it's transparent. Everyone understands, the path we're heading down.
Well, it sounds great. So I thank you for that, and yay, keep going.
And this might be a topic for us to keep on the sidebar for after the new town administrator, whoever he or she may be, is in place, and then bring this back for further discussion after they have had an opportunity to meet with you and become familiar with the situation, and to formulate any related recommendations regarding it that would be in the best interest of the town of Milton, if that makes sense.
Makes sense to me. Yep, will do.
Thank you. Anything further on this item?
I would hate that Tim showed up and didn't get a chance to speak if he wanted to. So if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, if we could just give him a chance for the floor.
You said, you took the words right out of my mouth. So go ahead, Tim, and thank you, Chase.
Chase is the best. What a guy. So I think just to sort of bring a little bit of clarity to some things that we've been talking about, I think Member Zulis's suggestion to kind of try to use the model that we have, which is more or less complete, as a kind of test run for how to kind of evaluate some of these interventions, before we decide what are our needs for professional help, whether it's staff or a consultant, I think is the right approach. Chase referenced the traffic mitigation fund, which is a revolving fund, but also a kind of intermittent it really depends on developments to pay into it. So it's not a regular kind of source, but it actually kind of works nicely with the way that the model is designed to work. It's a piece of software. It's a bespoke software that our consultant operates. And the way it kind of works is you sort of give the consultant a scenario, say we want to shut down Canton Ave in both directions in front of Town Hall. What are the implications of that. And they put that analysis into the model, and it spits out, this is what traffic is going to do on this street, on that street, at this intersection, at that intersection. Running that model costs money. You've got to pay the consultant to sort of do that. And so, rather than having a sort of full-time staff member on board and committing to that on a 12-month basis, what you have is a situation where we have scenarios that come up where the traffic commission is evaluating some type of a traffic intervention. And on an as needed basis, we sort of run the model, and whatever the cost for our consultant to do that is what we pay. So I think, at least in the sort of near to midterm future, if we can avail ourselves of that traffic mitigation fund to kind of see, get in the swing of working that model, I think that's a good way of operating. The other thing about sort of the work of the traffic commission, and this is how I see it, and Chase is the boss, so if I start to say something out of line, he should stop me. But I think going to regular meetings on a kind of a regular schedule, whether it's monthly or biweekly or bi-monthly, will be very helpful, because as it stands now, the traffic commission kind of meets on an as needed basis. As kind of issues and agenda items pile up, if we get a certain number, we hold a meeting and we discuss them and we act on them. Having a regular meeting where everyone shows up, I think will give us an opportunity to kind of spread our wings a little bit more on other issues that aren't necessarily, we got a complaint about this, or we had an incident here, we need you to look into it. So it'll give us a chance to really kind of sink our teeth into some of those, hot spots and recommendations of the traffic mitigation report. Another thing that I'm kind of working on, and I've got to kind of eventually, ultimately get the traffic commission's approval, and maybe hopefully, if it works out, bring it to the select board, is work on a traffic calming policy. One of the issues that we see at the traffic commission is, folks will bring us an issue, and there's not really a system in place aside from meeting, discussing, and kind of figuring out how to solve it. The intake and the output they're not there, in terms of how does the process work. I think we do the best that we can. A lot of issues, we either don't have the staff capacity, or we don't have the jurisdiction, or, an issue just doesn't have a solution. And so I think a lot of folks walk away with, I don't know what my expectations are when I go to the traffic commission. I'm trying to work on a policy that will kind of help to systematize things and help to sort of kind of set expectations both for residents and for staff, who is ultimately the folks that are kind of the implementers of the policies of the traffic commission and the select board. So I've had a number of conversations with folks. Dedham has a really, I think, spectacular policy that I'm kind of trying to crib from. But what I'm hoping to do is create a kind of a data-driven system for evaluating traffic issues that come up, and a data-driven system for determining what types of interventions we can implement to help to solve them, so that people have clear expectations of, this is what's going to happen if I have a complaint that I bring to the select board about traffic. These are the criteria by which the traffic commission is going to evaluate them. And this is what's going to happen if an issue meets these certain criteria. Still relatively early days on that. I'm hoping to have something done in the next few weeks. And then it'll be kind of open for other members of the traffic commission to look at, and kind of try to figure out. But that's something that I think will be really helpful for us. Not just evaluating, issues that come up, as they always do, but also kind of applying those principles to some of the recommendations of the traffic mitigation committee. So that was a lot. And hopefully I'll have more for you in the coming weeks and months. So thanks for the chance. And Chase, thanks for teeing me up there.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Silvers. Your hand is raised.
Yep, I was having trouble unmuting. Just two quick things. Thank you, Mr. Chair. One, just to reinforce it, the town developed a master plan, and then as part of that has a master plan implementation committee. The traffic mitigation committee report is essentially a master plan for traffic. We don't have a traffic implementation committee. That's what the construct of the committee was that's what the traffic commission would become. It's different. It's more than they probably have bargained for. It's more than they've done in the past. It's within their charge. We don't need to change their charge, but that's really the vision of the traffic mitigation committee, that the traffic commission would really implement that report. And that all sounds good. And then the other thing is, as part of that, because traffic is such an issue in town, we may want to, I think Chase suggested maybe coming back to the select board periodically and reporting. I think that's a good idea. And I think even a report to town meeting, maybe not this current town meeting, but a report to town meeting, perhaps in the fall, about, what the traffic commission is doing, how it's changed its construct, if you will, and how it does business. I think that might be good for town meeting members to hear. So just a couple of additional thoughts that we may want to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Zulus. Other board members? Well, again, we thank you, Chase and Tim. Tim, you'll be staying on for the update on the animal shelter. Chase, any other business that you wish to bring to our attention? If not, you are free for the remainder of the evening, sir.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Have a good night, everybody.
Good to see you. Thank you. So we move at the present time to the discussion and update on the animal shelter planning status. Mr. Zawinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you may be aware, first of all, I'm Tim Zerwinski. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development. I staff the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee, which is a committee that is overseeing the process of designing and ultimately building a new animal shelter for the town. I don't know if I have actually given an update on the animal shelter since I've been the director. Maybe I had way early days, but I know Katie Conlon and Melinda Collins have been very closely following that process and may have kind of updated you all periodically on that. But where we are right now is we thought we were in very good shape towards the end of last year, getting ready to get a bid out for a general contractor. We had a design that we put together and we're very satisfied with. We had an owner's project manager that we brought on that's very accomplished and very qualified and extraordinarily knowledgeable and helpful. It was a pretty momentous occasion when the general contractor bids finally went out. The air came out of the balloon when those bids got open. We had gotten cost estimates within the last 2 years that were in the sort of $3.5 million range for what the ultimate cost of this shelter would be. And the lowest bid that we got, I believe we got 5 responsive bids from general contractors. The lowest one was at least $2 million over that estimate at $5.5 million. And then obviously the higher bids were up into the $7 million range, which I think everyone involved in not committee, but also construction and kind of development generally understood that it's a really challenging time for building right now in terms of prices, supply chains, labor, material, all sorts of everything. But I think everyone was just sort of blown away by how high those bids came in, and really compelled the committee to not necessarily go back to square one, because I think a lot of good work has been done and put in the bank on this project, but we really had to rethink the project and how we're going to approach it, because it is a challenging time for construction, but also we're not in a position to wait out the storm, as it were. The current facility that the animal shelter is in was in really bad shape 20 years ago, to say nothing of today. So it's really imperative that we continue to make progress and continue to move towards a solution and not just sort of wait and find more favorable bidding circumstances. So to that end, we really kind of rolled up our sleeves. And I have to give a lot of credit to to members of the committee, the two chairs, Therese Desmond and Dan Daly, the Milton Animal League and their attorney, Mary McKettrick. Everyone has really been super involved in this process and really, solutions kind of oriented. So over the course of the last few months, we've been trying to kind of re-envision the project in a way that will be manageable in what we see as a kind of, again, really challenging bidding environment. And so there's a couple of major kind of changes to the approach that have been made. First of all, as you may or may not be aware, this is a sort of a unique project when it comes to public building projects. It is a public project. It will be a town-owned facility operated by the town. It's going to be built by the town. We're subject to all of the normal procurement laws, but it is being funded by outside gifts from the Milton Animal League through a major donor. And so there's been the understanding from the very start was, the town would provide the land. The town would eventually, again, take possession and operate the building. But the Milton Animal League would fund the planning and construction of the building in total, 100%. One of the things that we kind of figured out through that bidding process was the site that we have is, it is a challenging site. It's Quarry Hills is named Quarry Hills for a reason. It's an old quarry. There's a lot of rock that needs to be dealt with. Even though we're not building, a basement facility kind of building, it does take a fair amount of effort and money to clear that site and to get a flat kind of acceptable site to lay a pad and put a building on. So we determined that the site work was a significant driver of the cost, not necessarily the majority driver of the cost, but it was really a kind of an initial hurdle that we needed to kind of get over. And so the town, and we're hoping for the best at town meeting. I think we've got a really good argument, but the town has kind of stepped up in terms of providing what I consider to be a substantial amount of funding, to this project through both the capital budget and through revenue from free cash. And so, on the warrant is, I think, a little bit over $900,000 worth of town contribution towards readying the site for a building project, which again was not contemplated when we initially embarked on this project. So that's a major thing that I think is really demonstrative of the town's commitment to this project. We believe it's extraordinarily important, and we thought we could get it done through the initial model of the public-private partnership, but we're going to be making that commitment financially to the site work and to getting that site ready for the project. The other major change that we're working on is we're exploring modular construction rather than kind of site-built construction. There's a number of advantages to modular. It's the labor costs are less, the materials costs are less. It's a quicker timeline for construction. If you're not familiar, a normal kind of construction process is you pour the foundation, you put up you build the project on the site, which has its advantages, but also has its disadvantages. If the weather's bad, if things happen, it's a longer time frame on something like that. With a modular project, the components are built in a factory, climate controlled, very precise, very very exacting standards. And then really the only thing that happens on the site is the assembly of those parts. It's like Lego or linking logs. We all hopefully familiar with modular construction, but that's kind of how it works. It's a serious cost savings on the construction side. And it's something that, there's a separate set of procurement laws about that. It's something that's done throughout the Commonwealth, throughout the country. So we have been exploring the ability of the modular contractors that are out there to be able to do an animal shelter facility. Our architect, fortunately, has worked with modular construction all across the country. They're very familiar with it. They are confident that they can work through a design that meets the town's and the Animal League's needs for this facility. So that's looking very promising. Really, the mechanical kind of things that need to fall into place before we can really sort of get cooking are because we sort of effectively abandoned the original project that we went out to bid for. We sort of, the way that our contract with our project manager was structured, we sort of lost access to our project manager because it just wasn't in their scope of work to kind of do the work that we've been doing right now, which is kind of figuring out what to do. We're in the process of amending that contract to get our project manager on board. They have the expertise and the knowledge in this type of work that's really kind of imperative for the advisory committee to have. So we have amendment language. We're working with our project manager on a fee structure. That fee structure has to meet the approval of the Animal League. I don't think that there's any major changes. Labor costs have escalated a little bit since we initially signed the contract, but I'm hoping that it'll meet muster with the Animal League, and we'll hopefully have a contract amendment in front of you all in the very near future, at which point we'll have our project manager back on board, and we can put together a new set of bid documents for a modular project and kind of taking into account the site work that is necessary. Obviously, a positive town meeting vote is going to be necessary, which now, may not happen until June. And so that's a little bit of a gating issue. We'll get our project manager on board, hopefully before then. And once July 1 rolls around, we'll be in a good position to have that funding in place. And so that's where we are right now. I understand it's been a very, very long process. I was the assistant town planner when we initially sort of embarked on this. I was kind of hoping when I came back as the director that I'd be able to walk into a new facility. We weren't quite there yet. A lot of stumbling blocks have gotten in the way, but you have a really good committee at work. You have a really good project manager. And I think everyone is really committed to getting this thing done. And I think we have, knock on wood, I think we have a pretty clear path to what we think is a feasible project. It's just a matter of getting all those pieces in place. So that's where we are on the animal shelter right now. Happy to take any questions from the board.
Thank you, Tim. The floor is open to the board. Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say, Tim, that I recently traveled up to Burlington, Vermont, and saw some module construction for their dorm rooms for the overflow of UVM. And they actually connected them to an old home. So the front of it looked like an old home, but the back of it was all modular. And it was absolutely stunning. And they put it up in like 2 days. So I just want to say this is a great idea. And I know it's probably going to be a little bit cheaper, and it's not going to be this weird, space station looking thing if we don't want it to be. But I think that's a great way to go. So thank you guys for pivoting so quickly on that. So thanks.
Other comments or questions? Jim, I have one, and that is the site. Is that really firmed up, or is it still in an alternative situation?
Mr. Chair, that's up to you. And so what I'll say is this. At the outset of the project back in 2014, 2015, 2016, the first task for the advisory committee was to select the site. And at that time, we had looked at a number of sites. And I think the desire of the select board at the time and the committee internalized that was to look at town-owned property because being financed by a private donor, if you took land costs into account, it really kind of eats away at kind of construction costs. And if you've got a kind of cap of a certain amount of donation, you really want to be in a position where you're not kind of having to buy land. And so we looked at a number of town-owned properties, and for various reasons, primarily because of the use, we felt that the location at the town-owned land, off the dump access road near the golf course, was really optimal because of the size of it, And because of its kind of relative remoteness from other uses, it's a tough thing to have an animal shelter in a residential area. You really folks love animals. They don't necessarily want to live next door to the dog run. And so we felt that, there were a couple locations that may have been, technically feasible, probably a little on the small side, and also, not in really the best location. So we really did feel that, we knew that the ledge would be a challenge, but otherwise, that location really kind of checked a lot of boxes for the committee. The other, I hesitate to use the term option because I actually don't think it's an option. But the other notion is, the town has retained 4.5 acres of the town farm property where the animal shelter currently is. Does not have the sort of the site issues that the access road site does. There's a relatively flat field right next door, but I do think that runs into two related issues. One of which being, is the use of an animal shelter consistent with, the will of Governor Stoughton, which kind of governs, the use of that land, which we're all very, 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 very familiar with what Governor Stoughton had to say about the town farm. And the other is, does it conflict with would have been the sort of, I feel, relative long-term plans that the trustees and the select board have had for that property, which is, exploring the feasibility of affordable housing development. And so there's a legal gating issue, and then there's a sort of town priority issue where, we have a site that is, a pretty good site for an animal shelter, probably not a good site for other types of facilities or uses. And then we have a site that, maybe is a good site for the animal shelter, but also kind of may conflict with the law and also with some of the town's other priorities. So to answer your question, I think the committee's opinion is that this site is still the way to go. But if the Governor Stoughton trustees wanted to explore the possibility of using the town farm site, and kind of having a discussion of how that fits in with their other priorities, that's up to the trustees.
Thank you, Tim. I will sometimes put out a query for purposes that may vary from time to time. And in this instance, it was to make sure that both Aaron and Roxanne were up to date on that if they hadn't had information from other sources. And you did a very good job.
That's a very Socratic way of going about it, Mr. Chair.
And it's very important because they are now not only members of the select board, but they are trustees of the Governor Stoughton Fund. And we welcome you to that additional role, Aaron and Roxanne. So thank you, Tim. Any other questions for Tim on this particular topic?
I just have one quick one.
Yes, please, Roxanne.
So I know that when they were talking about the animal shelter being over budget, they were talking about downsizing the actual footprint of the animal shelter as well. So can you tell me about what size they're looking for now and how much they actually were thinking of cutting off in the size?
So from the very beginning, we have kind of targeted about a 5,000 square foot facility. One of the things that kind of took a little bit of time in this whole process is, the kind of the push and pull of, what are the things that would be really great to have in an animal shelter versus what are the things that are kind of really, fundamentally necessary, and the kind of the size shrinks and grows, based on those conversations. We have had a conversation with not only the Animal League, but also Nancy Bersani, who is the town's animal control officer with the Milton Police Department. And, they are, not being architects and designers, they're more concerned with these are the things in this facility that we absolutely need to have in terms of, intake and kind of, space for animals and medical facilities for the animals. And so, I don't have a square footage number, But I do know that we have a kind of a program list that both the Animal League and Officer Persani, who are ultimately going to be the users of this facility, that they have told us this is absolutely kind of what is necessary. As it relates to the footprint, I think everyone's goal, and there is, an element of a redesign process, now that we're going to a new modular construction, construction type of, obviously the target is the smallest possible facility that meets all of the programmatic needs, of the league and of Officer Persani. So, I can't say like, oh, we're going from 5,000 feet to 4,000 feet. I can say that we're not going larger than 5,000 square feet, and we're going to try to build the tightest, most efficient facility that still meets the needs, of the ultimate end users.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roxanne, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's
Good.
fine.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you on that, Tim. Well, let us now move on to the next item, agenda item number 8, discussion and approval of contract with Bola Engineering for surveying services of town land. And we already had a partial segue into this as well, right, Tim? Tim, just so that the members of the board understand, the contract has not been able to be finalized yet. A timing matter and matter of making sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. As I'll sometimes say, all the I's are crossed and all the T's are dotted. That's because I'm not an attorney like Mike Zulis. But Tim has a suggestion for us relative to this. So why don't we let you lead in and then bring to the fore your alternative to the motion that's before us today.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to give a little bit of background, we received some funding through an earmark in the fiscal 22 state budget to do, I think the earmark is technically for pre-development work on town-owned properties. And I think the notion behind the request for this earmark was to do surveying work and kind of feasibility work on certain town-owned parcels, again, for the potential disposition of town-owned parcels for affordable housing uses, or quite frankly, whatever uses, because really the survey is the first step in kind of evaluating, what the feasibility of a land use is. And so we put out a procurement document that requested surveying and due diligence services for 3 town-owned properties that my office in consultation with members of the select board and other committees felt were the most promising potential sites for potential affordable housing development. And again, the survey is the first step, figuring out what's the topography, where are the wetlands, are these sites look feasible on a plan? Are they feasible physically and legally for any type of sort of disposition? And so we had targeted, again, the town farm site. There's a site off of Brush Hill Road that's currently owned by the Parks Department that folks have been evaluating for several years. And then there's a portion of the police department land on Highland Street and Canton Ave that we had a request from the Master Plan Implementation Committee to look at for some other uses. And so we had the money from the state. It was a significant bit of money, $75,000 for surveying work. And so we put out a procurement document. We got 2 responses. One of them was actually over budget. And so we selected Bola Engineering, which came in meeting all of our qualifications and under the $75,000 figure. It's been tough kind of getting the contract with Bola together. So it's taken a few weeks to kind of iron out all of those details. That money needs to be spent by the end of the fiscal year. So, what I've been discussing with them is kind of prioritizing the scope of work, in terms of, tasks that we think are really crucially important versus tasks that it would be nice if we got them, but if you run out of time, then that's fine. I believe that you have a draft of that contract. There are, again, there's a couple issues that town council and Bola's attorney are still working out, but I think the main kind of meat and potatoes of that contract are what they are. We're getting an engineering firm to do surveying work. What I would request from the board in order to kind of get these guys in motion and working as fast as we can, because the clock is ticking on the fiscal year, is to authorize the town administrator to sign a contract with Bowler pending the approval of town council, and making sure the town council is satisfied with the changes and the edits that he's requested, from Bowler's attorney. So that, if that comes in between select board meetings, we can save ourselves a couple days and get them moving on doing that surveying work. So that would be my request on this.
Thank you, Mr. Spinsky. Questions, please, or comments? So we have a request for an alternative motion for agenda item number 8. That would, as Tim had said, have the board authorize the interim town administrator in this instance to sign the contract pending town council's approval.
Chair, I'll move to authorize the town administrator to sign the contract with Bowler Engineering for surveying services surveying services of town land. Sorry, subject to additional changes provided by town council.
Thank you, Mr. Zulus. Is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
Was that entirely clear? Was that entirely clear?
You did a great job. You've been at it since the finance committee early this morning, Mike. So take a bow and a long and good day. A roll call vote, please. Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
Mr. Doyle. Yes. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Am I done?
You are done.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for having me. And
have a good evening, and thank you for being with us.
Member Bradley, Member Musto, congratulations again. Good luck. Welcome to the board. Great seeing you here. Have a good night.
Thanks so much, Tim.
Bye.
Agenda item number 9 falls into that category of contracts that I described a couple of minutes ago. It is not yet ready for the board. It's close to it. We'll bring it back at our next meeting. It should be finalized by then for discussion with town council earlier today. We had hoped to have it wrapped up by CZA today, but they were not able to do so. So deferring number 9, we'll go to item number 10, which is the discussion approval of the contract between G&R Construction and the town of Milton for the fire station headquarters building. And you'll recall that at a previous meeting, we approved the bid, and now it is a matter of possibly approving the award. And Brian Walsh is with us. Brian? And Brian Fours from Vertex is with us. So can we move them from attendee to panelist, please? Good evening, Brian.
Chairman, can you hear me?
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. So yes, just brief information for the board. The contract was reviewed extensively with town council. That the offer had been made, the contract was sent to the recipient, and they have signed it. It is back, and we are ready to move forward, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fours, I don't know if there's anything you'd want to add about the contract or the process, but.
No, thank you for having me. We've engaged with the contractor. We've sent them the notice to award. We've sent them the request for their bonds and insurances. They have since subsequently executed the contract. I have reviewed that with town council, who has also signed the contract at this point. So currently right now, we have an executed contract waiting for the select board signatures.
And I just add again, especially for those residents that might be listening, we are thrilled with the contractor that won this bid. G&R Construction has done a lot of successful fire stations, and they've also successfully rebuilt our Milton Library. We're expecting a great job from them.
Thank you, both Brians, and Brian Walsh, thank you for coming from your meeting of earlier this evening to be with us for this important item. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, we have a motion before us. Is there a maker of the motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion. I propose to move to approve the contract between GNR Construction and the town of Milton for this fire station headquarters building.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. It has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you, Brian. And Brian.
Thank you.
Smile on your face, Brian Walsh.
And thank you. You know, I got to tell you, just a little extra pleasure. Our newest members of the select board making the motion and seconded. It does our heart warm to know that select board continues the support of this effort, and I know you'll all be proud.
Thank you. And Brian, go green and gold. We'll keep that one between us.
Other members.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Item 11 brings us to a discussion approval American Rescue Plan or ARPA recommendations of the Finance Committee. Mr. Zulus, can we turn to you, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 11A is the CLA, Clifton Larson Allen Consultant Services Agreement. Previously, this board appropriated up to $5,000 of ARPA funding to engage Clifton Larson Allen as a consultant for guidance on ARPA allocations and expenses tracking and reporting, basically to assist Karen Praval, our finance director, in her work on that. We have a contract from CLA. It's been revised by town council, and it has to go back to CLA to see if they'll agree. So that one is not ready for prime time as yet, but will be coming. Item 11B is the small business grant applications that have been voted previously by the Select Board Finance Committee on, I believe it was May 6th, which is last Friday. The Select Board Finance Committee recommended that the Select Board appropriate up to $50,000 from the Norfolk County appropriated ARPA funding for a small business assistance grant to PJM Inc., DBA Fitness Unlimited. Just as background, previously this board appropriated up to $500,000 for small businesses for assistance as a result of COVID. Fitness Unlimited has provided the application, the backup documentation, and has provided the use of these funds would be solely for back rent that resulted from COVID-19, which is a approved use of this type of grant. So that's the initial recommendation. So if people are ready to go, I'll make a motion to appropriate up to $50,000 Norfolk County provided ARPA funding for a small business assistance grant to PJM Inc., DBA Fitness Unlimited.
Is there a second, please?
Second that.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. Any questions or comments from any members of the board?
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question.
Ms. Bradley.
So, Mr. Zulus, thank you for the email that came in this evening. I went to read it, and it's 128 pages, and I skimmed it. I'm not going to lie, I was only able to skim it before this meeting. Is that like one meeting's minutes, or can you explain to me what that document is? Because it's massive.
Yeah, so that's to put everything in one place for you.
Thank you.
You received previously from Linda Napoli the Fitness Unlimited application,
yes,
the David Dupuy application. This is just so it's all in one place. It's all in one document, so you can look at it. So the actual votes were just the 4 votes, And it includes a health department presentation from this morning. So it's all in one place for you. So it's all things that you've received before, except the health department presentation from this morning, which is new, and but we'll talk about that one in a minute. But yeah, it's all stuff you've seen before or have had before, but it's just all in one place. And the only thing that's new, the only thing that's new is telling you what the vote was last Friday.
Right. I caught that. So thank you so much, because I was like, what is this giant thing? So thank you for explaining that to me. I will read it over the weekend. I appreciate that.
And just to amend, if I may, those are the materials that get vetted through the Finance Committee. And prior to coming to the Finance Committee, they are scrupulously reviewed by the Director of Finance for the town of Milton. We have to make sure that everything is in the best order possible, because we want our submissions to the Norfolk County to be acted on and not come back to us with questions and revisions, because if it does come back to us, we have to submit a whole new application.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Chair. Ms. Praval came in front of the warrant committee and explained all that to us previously. So I totally get that. And I know that she dots her I's and puts her little decimal points where they should be. So thank you for that.
She does indeed. You're most welcome. So we have a motion before us that's been made and seconded. I will do the Mr. Zulus.
Chair, if I may, I see Karen Praval with her hand up in the attendees list. I don't know if she wants to say something before we vote on this one, or.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zulus. Karen? Can we move her to participant? Those are the panelists, please, from attendees. Thank you, Suzanne. Karen, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had to run on and pick up my son, and then I just logged on. So I'm not sure where you were in the agenda, but I had a couple of comments
To help you with that, we have just moved and seconded, but not yet voted on, the approval of the $50,000 in funding for Fitness Unlimited.
Okay.
Do you have any comments that you would like to add to that?
I didn't have any comments for Fitness Unlimited.
Diligent work that you did in reviewing that application. Hearing none, Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you. Mr. Zulus, the floor is back to you.
Item 11B, Romanet 2, is the small business grant applications for other. And the other in this case is the Dave Dupuy Electrical Contractors LLC application that the Finance Committee voted on this morning. The reason we didn't vote on it last Friday is we were waiting for some additional documents for the application. We received those documents. Ms. Praval went through them, we went through them, we approved them. Those, if you noted in the application noted a loss of $55,960 in rent, $5,931.50 in utilities and gas, and then $8,834.76 in utilities electric. The total is more than $50,000. Our cap for businesses under the application is $50,000, and so Ms. Dupuy is aware of that and is seeking the $50,000. Those needs are well within the requirements of the ARPA funding, and so that's the recommendation of the Finance Committee that $50,000 be appropriated.
So, Mr. Zulus, I will, using the prior motion, move to approve the recommendation of the Finance Committee to appropriate $50,000 from ARPA funding to Dave Dupuy Electrical Contractors LLC, with the funding coming from the Norfolk County funds. Might there be a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. Ms. Praval, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted, if there were any recipients on the call right now, I want people to understand that since it's been approved by the select board, the next process is that will be submitted to Norfolk County for approval before the funds will be allocated to the town.
Thank you very kindly. Any questions from members of the board? We have a motion that has been seconded. I'll do the roll. Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley, Ms. Musto,
Yes.
and Mr. Doyle, yes. And again, thank you, Karen. And I'm sure that we have happiness on the part of the recipient. They were on earlier and had a discussion with us under public comment, Karen.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Zulus. Back to you.
I think I don't know whether it's appropriate, Mr. Chair, but I think we have one of our recipients' hands up in the attendee list. Not sure if you want to.
I see Beth's hand up. Thank you.
She's allowed to talk.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you very much. This will go a long way in helping us move forward. This is Beth from Fitness Unlimited. So thank you so much, Karen, all your hard work, answering all my emails. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Zulus.
Okay, item 11C is the ARPA recommendation with respect to a DPW water main project. The Finance Committee voted on Friday to recommend that the Select Board appropriate up to $1.5 million from Norfolk County provided ARPA funding to the Department of Public Works for a water main project. This will provide water main improvement work for Cabot Street, Pilgrim Road, Dean Road, Elm Street, and Audubon Road. This is in total I believe it's a $2.5 million project. Right now, the approximately 1 million has been appropriated for it, just over 1 million. And so this will make up the difference so that that water main project can go forward. It is a bit time sensitive because.
No.
Sorry?
Vinny.
Oh, it is a bit time sensitive. Because the bids are ready to go out, or the bid scheduling has either gone out or was ready to go out, I believe. And so that's the time sensitivity to that. So I don't know if Marina Fernandez is on this evening. Karen's certainly here if there are any questions, any additional questions on that.
I don't see her in the attendee list. But that was good coverage of a very, very studied request from the engineering department on a very important infrastructure matter for the town of Milton, which is one of the priority categories for ARPA funding. Karen, any comment that you'd like to make?
I've been working very.
Work on this.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I've been working very closely with Marina. I think this is a great opportunity for the town in terms of saving money. You know, and when we look at water rates, when we look at sewer rates, anything that we can do to lower what the residents are paying in terms of their, you know, the water rates and sewer rates, I think is a benefit to the town. So I support this this project moving forward, and I think that you'll see. When you don't see a water rate increase for the next couple of years, then you can see where the funding and the importance of putting the funding into these projects is that, you know, how you're able to benefit from.
Thank you, Karen. And this will also enable the town of Milton to get ahead of increased costs caused by multiple factors, including supply chain problems. So that's what the timing imperative is on this one in many respects. So Mr. Zulus, comment.
Chair, if I may, I do see, I believe it's Marina Fernandez in the attendee list, if there are any questions for her about this project. I'm guessing it's Marina, but.
I see her. Her hand is up. Can we
Yeah,
move her to the panelist?
Marina, you're muted.
Thank you, Marina. Welcome.
Thank you. I have been here, but for some reason you couldn't see me because I was on a different computer. But thank you for having me. Just to talk a little bit about the project, it is 7,000 linear feet of new water main pipelines, includes work on Audubon Road, Elm Street, Dean Street, Cabot, Pilgrim, just as Select Board Member Zula said. It is, we just opened bids last Thursday and it came in just under a $2.5 million engineering estimate. It came in at 2.35, and we are fortunate to have a local town of Milton contractor be the low bidder on this job. It is K&K Excavation. We have agreements ready to go, but are waiting approval from this board. And then the next step in the process, like Karen has explained to us, will be to go to the Norfolk County and get approved. Once that's approved, we'll be able to sign the contract. For those of you that don't know, we have one water main project every year, and it's based on a long study of the entire system and what our needs and potential failures are. So we're looking at water main projects, streets that are having failure or have increased likelihood of failure in order to pick these. So this is the current priority, are these streets. Also, we're fortunate that this job also includes curb to curb pavement. So we usually coordinate work with National Grid and all their utilities. And our hope is really to build from the bottom up. Basically, we want to have all of the utilities in good shape before we go ahead and newly pave a road, so that again, we are not just a year from now digging up that road again because of a failure that could have prevented with these types of maintenance.
Thank you, Marina. And Marina, if you haven't met our two new members of the Select Board beforehand, let me introduce Erin Bradley and Roxanne Musto.
Yes, I have met Select Board Member Bradley, and nice.
She met with you in the campaign.
I did, and I got to see her her amazing whiteboard that is all color coded. So this would be the project in blue,
correct,
and the pavement would be in black. So
yes,
she's fabulous. So thank you. It's nice to see you again, Marina.
Thank you. Very nice to see you. Thank you. Congratulations.
And the curb to curb is a very important point that you made, because that's oftentimes the first question residents ask.
Yeah, no, and as Karen can notify, we did check with the Norfolk County, and the pavement will be an accepted use of the money because it goes along with the utility work.
Karen has her hand up. Karen, you're recognized, and then Mr. Zulus.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. I hit the button by accident.
That's quite all right. Mr. Zulus.
Just a quick question, Marina. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marina, since the bid came in a little lower than anticipated, our motion is up to 1.5 million, but can we anticipate that that'll be a little more than we'll need for this?
No, I think 1.5 million is enough. We have 1.1 million in all of the other funds that we can use for water main projects. So if the projects go over budget, we would be able to cover it with our other funds. So does that answer the question?
Well, yeah, I mean, what I was trying to say is I thought we might not need 1 point. We might be coming a little lower than 1.5. If we've got 1.1 and we came in at 2.3, maybe we won't need the whole 1.5, but I guess that remains to be seen.
It's almost 1.2, it's 1.166, so. Yep. If there's anything left over, it comes back.
Right.
Correct.
And goes into the ARPA pool. And so too on any of the other projects. For example, if there aren't a sufficient number, we have an allocation of $500,000 for businesses. And if that isn't expended within the timetable, a lot of that money would come back into the ARPA pool for reconsideration and redistribution or reallocation. Any other questions for Marina, please?
I have a couple.
Please, Roxanne.
Hi, welcome. My questions, I have a few. When will this work be done? And the second question is, where will it be? Is it going to be posted on the website for those streets that are getting done? And the third question is, do we send anything to anybody in these neighborhoods? Only because when you do these streets, you certainly hope that they're not going to redig up these streets to put in, you know, any kind of utilities, right? At some point, if there's somebody who wants to add something in and they need to dig into the street. So how do we tackle those three things?
That's very standard in any of the projects that we do. So in terms of schedule, I'm hoping to have a contract signed as soon as we get authorization from the Norfolk County. I'm hoping to get the schedule that signed within 30 days. You do bring up a good point. In terms of schedule, we have a huge issue. It has never been seen before. We have a shortage of supplies in the construction. To the point for PVC, hydrants are also being ordered within 6 months. So that's why it's very important for the town of Milton to get this construction ahead of many other municipalities that actually go and having their projects to bid now, so we can order pipe ahead of everyone else. I believe that a lot of pipe is also going to Europe because of shortage and of what's going on in Europe. When I spoke with K&K last, our hope was that our supplier can provide us pipe by August. So we're looking at, we would like to get a couple of streets done this season. Water main projects cannot go after November 15th because of the weather conditions, and then we don't start up again until March. So we're hoping to get a couple of streets done this season, and then the remaining next season for paving, either 90 days or after a winter period. We coordinate very closely with National Grid so they can come in and do their gas work right after us. And then we also do sewer and drain work. People will be notified from the start. There is a website that I would like to get, invite everyone to please go into. If you go to the Town of Milton website, go under the engineering department. There are 3 types of projects. There is general construction, there is roadway, and then there is water mains. So under the water main projects, you will see what we have this year and what in our proposal for next year, which includes this project. We will always update the residents on the website with schedule and when we're going in. In addition to the website, we also do a hand flyer. We usually use orange paper, and Aaron, that goes with my color code craziness, but construction, we are always gonna use orange paper to notify residents, and blue if it's a water main job paper. So it tells folks that we have a water project on their street, whether or not there's gonna be shut off. Calls go directly to my department and we are able to respond right away.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
And just following up on your mention of Norfolk County, which we cited earlier, Karen, we received 2 awards today, did we not?
Through your chair, Mr. Chair, yes, we did. We received money for the school department for nurses for the next couple of years, and we also received $4,000 for the ClearGov, which is the budget module that we're going to be using as we present the budget. So it's a reimbursement. So each year we'll be able to submit for up to the amount that the select board approved for reimbursement. But I'm happy that those were approved, and I look forward to getting the rest of the projects into the system. They're moving pretty quickly. We have some really good contacts with CLA that I've been working with just to make sure that as we're entering these, that we're entering them under the right categories. The categories have changed over the last couple of weeks due to the Treasury Department changing the different drop-down menus and eligibility codes. but I think we have a good handle on it. And my goal is to have all of the ARPA projects approved through Norfolk County in the system by Monday. So if they do have any questions, we'll be notified, as soon as possible.
Thank you, Karen. Sorry about that detour, but it seemed like something you would all want to know about since it's very, very timely. Mr. Zulus, your hand is raised.
I was just going to say, I don't remember if the motion was made or not, but
Not yet, Mr. Zulus, so why don't you make it?
I'll go ahead and make it. So I'll make a motion to appropriate up to 1.5 million from Norfolk County appropriated ARPA funding to the Department of Public Works for water main project W22-1 for water main improvement work on the following streets: Cabot Street, Pilgrim Road, Dean Road, Elm Street, and Audubon Road.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. There's a motion made, second. Any questions? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you, one and all. And I apologize for the raspiness. It's allergy season, and you may be affected or afflicted by the same. Karen, thank you for being with us. Marita, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone, Select Board. Appreciate your time.
We appreciate your being with us this evening. Great work by everyone. Mr. Zulus, item number 12 is discussion update on the Town Administrator Screening Committee. Would you be willing to address that, please?
Yes, I will. If I may, Mr. Chair, just back on item 11, just for a second, we did receive we voted, the Finance Committee voted this morning after an excellent presentation from Ms. Delache, the Assistant Health Director, voted to recommend an appropriation of $39,970 to the Department of Health for the Permit Eyes permitting software. However, it's not on our agenda this evening, and there's no category on our agenda this evening. So I don't know that there's time sensitivity to it that will preclude us from moving forward on it at our next meeting. I don't think there is. And so, so anyway, so that's if we don't do it tonight, then that is that will be coming. Will be coming soon to theaters near you.
Finance Committee believed the right way to do it was the right way, and to defer it to our next meeting. And one of the things that we will have to be doing in light of the discussion with the annual town meeting is setting some standard, if I can use that term, select board meeting dates in the immediate future, for the immediate future. Anything else?
No.
It was an excellent presentation, a very thorough discussion, and it really demonstrated, clearly demonstrated the need. I don't want to use the word archaic, but a time-worn manual system that has to be used that is literally unfair to both staff and clients. And the proposed software system would streamline it and bring us well into the expectations of clients, many of whom have software programs that generate information on which we are dependent, but to which we cannot respond because we don't have similar types of systems in place. And we also discussed on that, if I may, Mike, dovetailing with the IT unit and seeing whether or not there are other departments within the town of Milton that would benefit from this software, and if so, see about the possibility of negotiating discounts for future acquisitions. Thank you. Mike, let us now move to the next item, which is the Town Administrator Screening Committee update. And
Item 12.
Work on that.
Yes, very briefly, the Town Administrating Screening Committee met on Monday night, I believe it was, reviewed questions for interviews. The time frame is for the committee is to review resumes in early June, to conduct interviews in mid-June, and to recommend candidates to this board by mid to late June. So that's the current timing.
Thank you. And the postings have been made for the position?
Yes. The posting's been out there for a while now.
That's correct. Going on a week and multiple locations.
Yeah, I think even more. I think it's been out there a little bit longer. Soon after the board approved the posting, I think on the 25th of April.
Well, we had to make a few adjustments because one of the things that the Collins Center did was to identify the closing date as the holiday, and that could be problematic from any number of perspectives. So the closing date is the day after the holiday.
Right.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Zulus? Hearing none. Discussion approval, town meeting articles. Article 34, possible amendments to change the use and home rule petition town-owned land at Cow Road and Blue Hill Parkway. Mr. Zulus?
Yeah, I'm going to sit down after this one. Okay. Let's see. This one is okay. Actually, it'd be helpful if I can share my screen on this one. And then I can kind of walk people through what the school building committee is recommending. Not sure if can I share my screen? Do we know? I guess I'll just try. I don't know what just happened. The warrant committee approved the Article 34, which is the land swap, so-called land swap article, as it was presented by the school building committee. However, made a couple of suggestions for clarification. One, that it made clear that this is going to be just for school purposes. The typical language drafted by town council is general municipal purposes, including but not limited to the school. So we wanted to change that and say it's just going to be a school. The second thing recommended by the warrant committee was a so-called reverter clause. Basically, if the school isn't funded, if money isn't appropriated for the school, everything goes back to the way it was. So that's the language we put in. And I'll walk you through it, which is if the school if there's no appropriation for a school for this purpose on or before June 30th, 2027, everything goes back to the way it was. And then the other change that was voted on Monday by the school building committee, recommended change to the recommendation. It came from discussions with a leading conservationist in town who has had reservations, to put it, reservations about this project, who suggested putting a conservation buffer along the front of the property. And then also we wanted to make clear that there was going to be an additional buffer. It's going to be a zoning buffer, additional buffer along the front of the property, and a buffer all along the Home Inc. property. And so if I share my screen, no, wait a minute. Let's see. Hold on, let me try to share my screen. All right. All right, can you see that? Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. All right. So the language at the top, the language at the top, substantive language, that sets out the 50-foot strip of conservation land. So there would be an addition, there would be a 50-foot strip of conservation land along Blue Hills Parkway at the entrance. That would be combined with a 50-foot setback. So essentially what you'd have is for the entrance, if those two pillars of the entrance, and the intention of the school building committee is to keep those pillars, you'd have a walking path basically through the woods, through the conservation land in the setback woods, a walking path to the school. Again, that came from the discussions with the conservationist in town. And then if we scroll down, and then there were also the changes above, just again, to make clear that this is just for school, nothing else. And if it's not a school, it goes back. And then the language at the bottom is the language, the so-called reverter clause, or the language that provides that if the funding is not appropriated on or before June 30th, 2027, for lack of a better, this all says everything goes back to the way it was. And so that was recommended by the school building committee on Monday. And the school building committee is seeking a vote from this board to approve that. This board in the past has approved this article, but the school building committee is seeking a vote to approve this amended recommendation to send it to the warrant committee. This is something that could have been done on the floor of town meeting, but the school building committee thought, if we can do it up front, that would make it easy for everyone. Let me just show you the map. And can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So if you see down in the lower, kind of lower middle page, that green shows the 50-foot conservation space. That area would be kept in the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission. Wouldn't come out. It would be maintained as is. On top of that, there'll be a 50-foot setback. That's a zoning setback. So effectively, you'll have 100 feet before anything can begin. And then along the right side, that is the 50-foot setback all along the homing property. Effectively, this turns a 6.8 acre parcel into under 5.5 acres. However, the school building committee thinks that this is important for the purposes of the abutter, for the purposes of conservation and the intentions of those who want to move forward with the project. And so that's why the school building committee has moved forward with it. So that is the vote of the school building committee from Monday night.
Thank you, Mr. Zulus. Questions for Michael from Erin or Roxanne, please?
Whoever drafted that reversion clause did yeoman's work. So that was brilliant, because I know it's really difficult to do in statute. So thank you to whoever drafted that.
Hearing no other comments, Michael, what would you like at this time?
Well, a vote to approve the amended recommendation to Article 34 and to send it on to the warrant committee for consideration.
As presented.
Can I just
Motion made.
I'm sorry, I wanted to ask a quick question. I was
Please,
muted. And sorry, I apologize.
What we can do is we can have a second and then open it for discussion.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll second
Bradley?
that, Mr. Chair, for discussion. I'll second
Thank you. It is moved and seconded and open for discussion. Ms. Musto, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I just received this information this morning with this new language, and I would like a little bit more time to review it. So I'm wondering, if I would just abstain here or if we can defer it. And I know Richard Wells isn't here either. So just a thought. So I want to really read through this better.
Erin, I'm sorry, you may be muted. You are.
Okay. I was thinking parliamentary, Mr. Chair, and so I was saying there's already a motion on the table. I'm deferring to you, but I was talking to myself. Sorry about that.
Ordinarily, we would move on the motion as seconded. Mr. Zulus?
So I understand the hesitancy. I will say this has been vetted with town council for what it's worth. But the only time sensitivity, and given what we did with Bob at the beginning of the night, it may be less time sensitive. But the only time sensitivity is if the warrant committee getting it in front of the warrant committee for consideration. So, but I suppose we could send it to the warrant committee without approving it ourselves for consideration. I don't think we need to approve it. It's a recommendation. But that's the only thing. And it, you know, it may not be as much of an issue given the fact that we're looking to June 6th now, and maybe the warrant may, so maybe we, I don't know when we're meeting next, but you know, if, as long as, I think the idea from the school building committee is to kind of get it in front of the warrant committee so they can consider it before town meeting, because that may make things a little easier.
Ms. Busso?
I was gonna say, I do understand that. I do like the idea of this clause in here. I just want a little bit more time. So if it requires a vote tonight, I would just abstain from the vote, so I have a chance to really review it. I don't think it's fair for me to vote on something I really haven't studied that well.
That's
And
fair enough.
you know, I'm just trying to get up to speed with this. Thank you.
Ms. Bradley, did you want to make a comment?
No, Mr. Chair, I actually watched the meeting on Monday, and so I know what this article or this revised article is. I think it's a great compromise to allow for more buffer zone and for the reversion clause, which were the two major things that came up at the warrant committee meeting, at least one of them that we had. So I think that the school building committee, and again, whoever drafted this, did yeoman's work in little time to try and make that compromise happen. So for me, I'm prepared to vote this evening, Mr. Chair, but that is, I completely and totally defer to you, as I don't know parliamentary what we do here. I'm used to another committee. So, but for me, I have all the information, and I'm well up to speed on that. So thank you.
Mr. Zulus.
Let me make a suggestion. I don't want to have someone voting before they've had time to review it. So can we? I don't think there's any prohibition from us sending this on to the warrant committee without our having voted on it, just for their, you know, so they can at least schedule it. You know, so I don't think. I mean, I'm not sure about that, but I don't think there is so much. So we could do it that way, or we could just wait. As I said, we're not, if town meeting is not going until June 6th now, I think, you know, where are we, May 11th? You know, we'll probably meet, you know, maybe I don't know when we're going to meet next, but we'll probably meet in enough time. So hopefully the warrant committee can take a look at it before town meeting. So I'd be in favor of withdrawing the motion so everyone can feel comfortable about it, as long as we have time for the warrant committee to take a look at it.
Ms. Bradley, any further comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not want to send this to the warrant committee without a vote from the select board. I think that the warrant committee has looked in the past for all the votes that have happened prior to their vote. So I'm all in favor of withdrawing and us voting on it, you know, in a week or 2 weeks. I already have the 16th marked down. So if y'all want to meet, I'm good. So I totally understand, Roxanne, and I get that, but I really strongly feel that we should take the vote before the warrant committee.
Okay. I concur with that, Ms. Bradley. I think the withdrawal is essentially tabling the motion that has been made until the next meeting of the select board. Is that agreeable to all the members present? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Item number 14, committee appointments. 14A, Conservation Commission, Mr. John Cannon and Mr. Hans P. von Lingen. This is for these appointments for these two positions for 3-year terms. Mr. Kiernan is the chair of the Conservation Commission. He's been a member for well over 3 decades. He is in his 26th year, I believe, as chair. He's tremendously respected throughout the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions, by state agencies with which the CONCOM deals with continuously. Contractors respect him, engineers respect him, whether you agree or disagree with him. He is one of the most artful committee leaders that you would have an opportunity to work for and with. Hans has completed or is just about to complete his first full term. He is a senior environmental specialist and brings tremendous value to the Conservation Commission. So with that background, I would move, ask for a second, and then we can have discussion to appoint John Cannon and Hans von Langen to a 3-year term on the Conservation Commission. Is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Roxanne. Any questions? We're open for discussion. Hearing none, I'll do the roll. Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. I'd better have voted yes. I'd be in real trouble with that. 14B, Massachusetts Port Authority Community Advisory Committee. And I want to give some background information. Shortly after the board reorganized, I had an inquiry from Mr. Hart about his interest in serving the community. We had a conversation about committees and looked at the availability of committee openings as they're best known at this particular point in time. And we're going to have a little later discussion under a separate agenda item this evening, which will be very, very important. The discussion led very much to the Mass Port Authority Community Advisory Committee, in which he was considerably interested. And one of the things that I suggested was that I step out of the way and have him have a meeting by telephone, Zoom, whatever they chose, with Mr. Doherty, who was, until about 3 weeks ago, when he resigned from the position of the town of Milton's representative to the MPACAC. They had that meeting, and following it, I had a conversation with Mr. Doherty, who very enthusiastically recommended Mr. Hart for this particular position. In concluding the conversation with Mr. Doherty, I asked him a question, and it was about an intersect between this particular appointment and the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee. And had there been any thought about having somebody who bridged that gap? If we look at some of our committees and boards, we sometimes see that they or can be, or maybe perceived as being isolates, when in reality we could benefit in many instances from some type of intersect between or among them. Mr. Doherty thought that was an overdue thing that we should have in place. I spoke with Mr. Hart about Mr. Doherty's recommendation. Mr. Hart did his homework and he agreed that if he were appointed as the town's MPACAC, I'll just use the acronym if I may at the present time, representative, he would be more than willing to serve on the ANAC, the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee, to which we recently appointed Katie Conlon, the past chair of the Select Board. This all relates, of course, to an executive session that we have later on tonight, which will be very important. So that's the background information. I wanted to be fully open, let you know exactly what transpired. And Suzanne Bridges is with us, and I believe Suzanne, Mr. Hart completed the volunteer application form for, was it both positions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. For that
Is that something the board would like to all see? No, okay.
Don't see that, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that that had been done diligently. And we have before us, therefore, with that background information, for a motion and a second in discussion, a motion if anybody would like to make it.
I'll move to appoint Chris Hart to the Massachusetts Port Authority Community Advisory Committee for a one-year term.
And I should have mentioned, this is a one-year term appointment. Is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Musto. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll
Mr.
call.
Chair. Hold on,
I'm
I
sorry,
have my
Ms.
hair.
Bradley?
Yep, sorry. I
I'm
just
sorry,
have
I
a
didn't see your
question.
hand.
It's okay.
It's
gets hot.
perfectly embedded in the curtain.
I know.
Have you been told that
Julie used to have
before?
me turn off my camera, so maybe I should start doing that.
It's great.
It matches perfectly. I just had a question if there was to Suzanne, if there was any other applicants, A, and is this the one that Katie is still on, or did Katie resign? I'm just confused about how you guys just appointed Katie, and did she remove herself? And also, were there other applicants?
Two questions, Suzanne.
I'm sorry, other applicants, I would like to be able to check my notes before I say yes or no. I'm leaning towards no for the airplane. We've had some other applicants I know we had an applicant come in for the animal shelter recently, and we've had one or two since Bob Hiss's ad in the Milton Times, generic. Like, I would volunteer for anything, and here is my resume. I just want to help the town. So we do have those. And Katie Conlon, excuse me, she had stepped down from the committee and then was reappointed as a non-select board member.
Thank you.
Mike or Arthur wants to correct me if I'm saying that correctly. Her appointment before was as a select board member, and now her latest appointment is just a town resident. And I actually believe she is listening here tonight, so I could have her interrupt and correct me, as I'm sure I'm in need of that, because I wasn't expecting to be speaking on that matter. But
I'm sorry, Suzanne. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't booting her off or something weird was happening.
Oh, not in the least bit. In fact,
no.
We have several vacancies for the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee. And hopefully we will have more people applying for that as we develop more of a communication program. But we'll have, at this particular time, we have two different motions. The first one is with respect to the Massachusetts Port Authority Community Advisory Committee for one-year term, independent of the ANAC. Okay. So we had a motion from Mr. Zulus. We had a second by Ms. Musto. Any further comment? The roll, Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. At this time, we have a motion to appoint Mr. Hart to the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee for a one-year term.
I'll move to appoint Chris Hart to the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee for a one-year term.
Is there a second?
I'll second
Ms.
that.
Musto seconded. Any discussion, please? There hearing being none heard. Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
And Mr. Doyle. Thank you all very much. Moving on to our next agenda item, a discussion of possible new, it says subcommittees, it may be subcommittees or committees. These are two topics I wanted to bring to the board for an opening or a preliminary discussion. Mike, I don't know if you recall, but just about a year ago when we were walking back from the Black Lives Matter related event in Mattapan, you had asked me if after a year on the select board, there were any things that I felt that we needed to pay attention to and that were on my mind. And I said yes, and I had two of them. The imperative was taking a look at this notion of economic development. And one has to be careful about the terminology here. And what I'm suggesting is if this is of interest to the board members, it's something that would be fleshed out so that there's no confusion with economic growth theory with micro and macroeconomics and so on down the line, but a setting that's done in the context of municipal governance and community development, support and information on which we might get from other communities that have such entities in place and from the Mass Municipal Association. So, Mike, your hand is raised, and you started this wheel rolling.
Yeah, I just want to say that your memory is much better than mine, but I think they're both great ideas. I think, you know, if someone wants to take the laboring oar to create a charge and you know how the committees should be constituted, how many members, should it be a select board member, you know, how it would be constituted. I mean, typically when we've proposed not subcommittees, because we're a board, so it's a committee, right? You know, in the school committee, it's a committee, so it's a subcommittee. But in the past, when we've done it, the proposal has been, here's a proposed charge, here's a proposed membership, and then we've all weighed in. So I think that would be a great way to get started on these two. If someone wants to make proposals on them, and then we can flesh them out and get them rolling.
That's congruent with what my thinking was, and maybe you'll want a 2-page scoping out of this. And the question I have is a sense of the board, whether or not this would be a step to take for exploratory or preliminary purposes.
Mr. Chair, I think this is a great committee idea, and I think it's one that's much needed for our town. So I am in full support of your wonderful idea and conversation with Mr. Zulus a few years ago. So thank you for that.
I don't know what that might mean for my calendar, but I would be willing, if Ms. Musto is in agreement with taking a preliminary look at this, to take the lead and bring something back to the select board to flesh it out a bit after consulting with others, communities, the MMA, and so on down the line, so that you would have something to look at.
I think there's no problem in doing that. I also would want to point out that I want to know how this would overlap with any of the committees that we already have, if you see any duplication, because if there's any kind of duplication, sometimes you have too many committees sort of duplicating some of the same jobs and the same roles, and that would negate the reason that you would need it. So I would want you to also look at what some of these other committees we already have are doing and how this would be different. So, but I'm open to hearing, you know, that.
That's a very good point.
And Mr. Chair, if you need any help with the 2-page scope, I would be more than willing to work with you on that.
Thank you. Why don't I start something, feed it to you? I'm more than welcome.
That'd be great.
And then once we have that in place, we can share it with our other colleagues and get additional feedback, and ultimately a determination as to whether or not we should move in this type of a direction. Thank you. That led to the second point, and it's fiscal year planning. That was the second concern I had, and I did a lot of that in the world in which I came from, and wanted to put it on the table. I also heard it very clearly in the campaign. So I invite anybody who has something that they would like to add or bring to the table about this to be discussed at this point in time. Ms.
Musto. I was going to say, okay, so when I was on the Warren Committee a while ago, before Erin's time, they did, all of the departments did do planning. They presented budgets that were 5 years out. So I know that we got away from that for a while, and then there was COVID and so forth, but that used to be done all the time by the departments. I don't know if you recall that, but they used to do that.
Ms. Bradley and then Mr. Zulus.
So I thank you for that, Mr. Chair. I personally think that this is a great subcommittee, and here's why.
I think that having department heads come up with a 5-year plan and their 5-year goals is great, but they have to all come together and see how they can work together and see, because when I was meeting with a lot of these department heads, they all have amazing ideas for what they want to do. And actually some of them overlap each other. And I don't think that our department heads have had the opportunity to really come together and coalesce around what we can do for a 5-year strategic plan. So, Mr. Chair, I'm assuming that that's what you mean for fiscal year planning. I don't think, do you mean year by year? Or do you mean more of a long-term, this is what we're thinking?
Well, I don't have a definition for it. That I would open to my colleagues, but I will give you my experience, which has been with 3-year and 5-year planning as being the best plans. And usually those plans have to be reformulated. In the 3-year planning process, reformulation would begin in the 2nd year, and with the 5-year planning process, reformulation would be probably in the 3rd year at the very, very latest, because the further you go out, the more wiggle room there is, and uncertainty, and the environment changes, like the supply chain issues that we heard discussed by Marina, and we hear in the news all of the time. And then this notion that you have of bringing it together across departments so that there's a town-wide holistic picture, which helps to inform other committees and boards in the town and assist in the decision-making process.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to hear you say that, because the breaking down of the silos that have kind of been created, I think is going to be really integral. Like if you had a 6-acre plot of land, you wouldn't hire 3 different people to mow the lawn, but yet we hire more than 3 people to mow lawns. So it's just, there's a lot of interesting little nuances within our town that I think this is a great idea, because I think we might not only be able to save some money, but we might be able to project out what our goals are. And that's something that has been missing for a while. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Zulus.
Oh, sorry. So 2 things. One, so I think the last fully formed 5-year plan that we had was 2016, which our current interim town administrator, who was then the town administrator. And I know there was an intention to re-engage with it in the end of 19, beginning of 20, and then COVID hit. And so it has been on the radar and was on the radar and needs to get back now that we've emerged from COVID. And I think our current interim town administrator can help us get started on the process, and since she's not here, I'll say this, may be convinced to help us after she's no longer the interim town administrator, perhaps on a committee. But so that's that. And then the other point was what? Oh, so it's interesting what you said, Aaron, about hiring different departments doing the same thing. We try to tackle that when we had what was called the Town School Consolidation Committee back in 2013 to 2016. That kind of fell away, right? But we tried to do a lot of that software, payroll, all of those things. We were kind of working on, where we had ideas about the different fiefdoms within departments and doing different things. Didn't make much progress on that because a lot of that turns into political capital and political will, frankly. But I think it'd be so I don't know if that one is different. If you're talking about consolidating efforts, if that's different than fiscal planning, but I think they're both spot on.
And of course, what it is that we scope out in these 2 areas would, of course, be drafts that we would want to sit down and share with the incoming town administrator, get their input, advice, and work collaboratively and collegially. And in 2004, I finished up as a co-chair of the school's first long-range planning committee. And one of the things that was observant in that 2-year process was cited by Mike in the reverse, or the obverse side of the coin, and that is that there was no intersect with the town departments, when in reality, there is a great relationship, whether it's the fire or the Board of Health of the police department. We're all together, we're under the same tent. And the more that we can function collaboratively, cooperatively, we can compromise, the more advantageous for our town, because we're going to have a little bit of tough economic sledding in the years immediately ahead of us. We have a healthy, this is just one person speaking. I'll step out of my official role and say that without the monies that we have had from multiple sources, whether it's CARES money or ARPA money, DESI and so on down the line, we would not have the budget that we are able to bring to town meeting for fiscal year 23. That money's going to go away. And we have to be prepared for that eventuality so that we can sustain what everybody wants to have as the sustainable town of Milton. That's just a side comment. Now I'll step back into my role and see if anybody wants to take the point of this, or we want to ask Anne Marie, as Mike suggested, if she would be interested in working on this after she completes her tenure, or in collaboration with a member of the select board.
Mr. Chair, if it's not too forward, I would love the opportunity to work with Anne Marie about drafting a scope and running it past y'all before it goes any further. But Mike, Member Zulus, sorry, is 100% right that the last one that we've had was from her. And she and I actually talked about that when I met with her. And she also has some really great ideas for our town, and she's done tremendous work. So if it's okay with you and the other members, I would like to take a stab at drafting that with Anne Marie.
Thank you very much. And I think that would be music to her ears in multiple respects. Would you like me to approach her on this, or would you like to do so directly?
I can do so directly when she is back from when she feels better.
Thank you. Well done and well said. And it will be great to have her back. Thank you both for this discussion. And that leads us on to, as has been referenced.
I think Roxanne had something.
I just had one thing.
I'm sorry, Roxanne. Thank you.
Sorry. So I think it's worth drafting these things. I think the other thing to be aware of is that we also, we're making the town administrator a strong town administrator. So I think, we've got to look at that too, because if we're using a strong town administrator, they could certainly do some of this, by having, to Erin's point, having all the departments, work together and things like that. So, I don't know whether we need really a committee. We'll have to investigate whether we do. But if we have a strong town administrator, which is what we've been trying to do, then, that could be one of the things that we, as a select board, say that we want them to work on. So just a thought.
Very much, yeah, very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Hearing none, let us move on to the next agenda item, which is committee and board volunteer recruitment process. And I'd like to invite, if it's agreeable to you, Suzanne Bridges to join in the discussion, since she manages this. And Paige, Suzanne works directly with you, and you might have some insights as well. So we'd invite any contributions that you might have to make as well. Again, we've made reference to it. As I was going through the work with the Massport Authority, I saw right under it, there was a Logan Airport Committee. So I zinged on that, and lo and behold, there was nobody there. And there was an archaic committee, but it was up there. So I asked them to confirm that it was no longer in existence and bring it off the site. And that's just an example of the type of collaborative weeding and building that we can do. We have a great foundation, and the idea is to build upon it and move forward in the interest of our community. Erin, you've had some thoughts on this. Roxanne, I know you have had some also. So let me turn to the two of you, beginning with Erin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had the pleasure of talking to Suzanne earlier today when I went to drop off some paperwork. And we got to talking just briefly because she was going to lunch and I didn't want to hold her up. But I'm kind of a little bit of a data nerd person. So I took the time in the last few days to go through all of our committees. And out of our committees, we have 51 committees. And when you break it down, there are 315 positions that are appointed by either the moderator or the select board. Of that, there's 176 men and 132 women, which is the only demographic that I could really flesh out with the information I had, which was just basically people's names. Of the committees that list the chairs, 21 of the chairs are men and 9 of the chairs are female. 2 of the committees have co-chairs, which are both a male and a female. That to me is striking. And I was talking to Suzanne about that and about how we can make sure that we are really expanding our reach to all of the precincts and to make sure that we are getting a true representation of the demographics in front of that is our town, that to make up our boards and committees. So we went through a little bit, and I'm going to send you my data sheet, Suzanne. I forgot to do it earlier today, but I'll send it to you. But it's, I broke it all down, and I would really like to talk with her offline, and Anne Marie and Paige and whoever else I should be talking to, Rob, who manages all this. But it's kind of a cumbersome process right now when I look at it. And I mean that not in the way that the form is cumbersome, but in order for folks to know about it and to fill it out, I feel like it's a little hidden and it's a little bit inside baseball. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do was make sure that all community members felt like they were being heard and that they were being asked, because sometimes you have to ask people before they'll actually apply. I can't tell you how many people asked me to run for select board before I finally said yes. So I think that there's part of this that we just need to take a look at what our demographics are. The other thing is that page, one of the paperwork I had to fill out was a self-identification paper, which I could choose to fill out or not fill out. And that was really interesting to me. And I'm wondering if it's something that we might want to just take a look at when it comes to our boards and committees, like what precinct are you from? Are you Hispanic? Are you not Hispanic? Are you a member of the LGBTQ community? Are you not? Are you part of the BIPOC community? There's a lot of things that I think that we can start doing to really open this up. And I got to tell you, my conversation with Suzanne today it really was a light in my tunnel, because I was like, there are so many positions, and I had no idea that she was the person, because she's done yeoman's work with it. But I think that we could do better for our neighbors to make sure that they know about it. Like, put the ads in the Milton Times, put the notices in the library newsletter, send it out from the town clerk's office twice, 3 times a year for folks to apply for these positions, so that we really do have a robust application base for us to choose from, because those folks are out there. I mean, Roxanne and I jumped in late, but we were out there. So I think it's all about who we ask and how we leverage those networks to make sure that our whole town is being represented. And I'm more than willing to work on this with Suzanne. And if you don't want me to, that's fine too. I'll send you my data. But if there's anything that I can do to help this, I would absolutely love it.
Go to Roxanne, Suzanne, and Mike, and Paige in that order, if I may.
So I think Erin brought up a lot of really good points, because we both saw that with, getting people involved. I do think one thing that would help is, and I think we both would probably agree on this, the town website. It's very hard to navigate. So it's hard, you do a lot of clicks to finally try to get to where you're going. And what if you're someone who isn't computer savvy? I do think with the committees, the one thing I think that's very important is, I think people have to understand what the commitment is, because just because we have all of these different new people on them and we want all these people to get involved, that's great. But they also have to know what the commitment is. And I think oftentimes, I mean, I was on a committee before where we had somebody was on the committee and never showed up for anything. And I, at one point I said, is this person still in this committee? because we've never saw her, so I do think that's a valid concern is, people have to understand what the commitment is. And sometimes that is a reason why people don't want to be involved, because there's a lot of time commitment on some committees, right? So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is, in terms of get the availability of where people find out about it, even at town hall, if we had some kind of a, we have the drop box there if you want to drop something off and you don't want to come into town hall, but maybe if we had something there where people could drop off or pick up an application, a paper one even, because some people aren't real computer savvy. But I think also there's got to be a way that we get out the information as to what's involved with each committee. And I think that's a very important thing. Back to the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee, I want to speak about that one in particular. I sat on that committee. I was a chair at one point in that committee. And the one thing on that particular committee that I think is very essential is you cannot have people from one side of town on that committee. You have to have people from all over the town on that committee. And so to the point of having, different people on different committees and representing the town, that's great. But if all of those people are from one section of town, that doesn't help us. And that doesn't help, especially on that committee. And I can tell you that that was a big issue when I sat on that committee. So I think we have to be aware of those things, but we also have to make it easy. So if somebody wants to inquire about, what the committee does, that there's someone that they can, a number they can call and speak to somebody about that. And the other thing is, just say somebody wants to find out about the committee before they make a commitment to that committee, how they can listen in. I mean, we all know how to do that, but does everybody know that you can actually go to a meeting and, now there's Zoom, but you could show up at a meeting if it was live and listen to what's going on before you make that decision, whether that interests you. So I think there are a lot of different ways and different things we could do to help with that. And so that would be what I would say for that.
Well thought out and said. You remind me of when I returned to town, excuse me, after being transferred for 20 years to assignments in Chicago and Manhattan, and offering to or volunteering to participate in the committee and never hearing anything. After 2 years, I said, well, I was a conservation commissioner before. I'm going to make an inquiry and see if there are any openings, and there was one. So I went back on the Concom instead.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that there's a response mechanism for people.
Right.
Just an anecdote, and I'm sure we all have more of them. Suzanne, input from you at this point. And let me just say that part of this is to make things easier for our staff too.
Right.
Make it much more fluid and dynamic, like what we were talking about with respect to the Board of Health process. I turn it back to you.
Yes, so since I started, I have definitely dug into to see, what was missing and how I could help and what updates, I could have Rob make on the website, and just small things like that. But I would also love to work with Erin, because we chatted today for like 20 minutes and we could have chatted for 2 more hours just about getting a vast majority of citizens to come on board and help in any way that they can. And I felt a little hurt feeling that some people are saying they felt, oh, it's inside and I don't know how to find out about it. And because, we're very happy to accept all applications and get a vast majority of people involved and hear their thoughts and opinions. And yeah, so I think Erin's ideas are great.
Thank you for that input. I promised Mr. Zulus, then Paige, who will go back to you, Roxanne, if that's all right. Mr. Zulus, you have the floor.
Just very quickly, someday I'll tell you the story about how I got involved in town government after an application to volunteer sat for a couple of years, but it had to do with having a chat with my neighbor. But one thing that occurred to me as a jumping off point for what Aaron was talking about in terms of diversifying committees and expanding the breadth of our outreach and our committees. There are a lot of things set out in the DEI policy that was proposed by our Equity and Justice Committee and that was adopted by this board. So that DEI policy lays out some part of the processes that I think it's certainly a place to start. May want to expand even more, but I think it's a good place to start. So.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful. Paige, to you and then to Roxanne. Thank you,
I was just thinking that after Aaron left today, how I knew everything that goes on in the town I live in currently. And I realized I got, I don't remember if it was a bill or my taxes, but with that came an entire list of all the committees the town has and asking you to volunteer and giving you a little bit of a blurb and a link to go to exactly what you're talking about, to say what that committee does, how they do it, when they meet, and if you want to look into it. And yeah, I just went after you left today. I said, oh, that's so we could do a mass mailing to everybody in Milton, maybe along with something else. So it's not, cost a small fortune, but it's just an idea. Yeah.
When I worked in Chicago, I lived just over the north side line in the town of Evanston. And when I registered to vote, they handed me a packet that had all of the committees, boards, and towns, and the procedures to follow in volunteering to be on the library committee or on this, whatever it happened to be. So yes, mousetraps like that abound. We ought to use them.
Yeah,
and,
I was surprised when Aaron said that that the residents weren't aware, because I feel like we're always looking, always, and more than welcome. If somebody comes in to fill it out, we're like, oh, what do you want to do? So yeah.
And Roxanne, back to you.
I was just going to say, I'd be happy to work on that too with Aaron and Suzanne.
That sounds like a great team. Acceptable to everybody else, Mr. Zulus?
I think it's great.
Certainly is to me. Thank you to the three of you, and Paige. It's agreeable to you to have Suzanne as part of the team.
You're muted.
Absolutely. Well done.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I think Mr. Zulus is right. We have to include the Equity and Justice for All Committee and some of the other committees that that we currently have to make sure that we really are reaching everybody we need to reach. So
yeah, and one of the populations we want to take a look at too is our talented people with disabilities.
Yes. Yes, we keep forgetting that. And
we have a phenomenally talented community of so many backgrounds and varieties and experiences to draw upon. And an ultimate measure is when you don't have to go out and recruit people because you have such a plethora of applicants for your boards and committees. That's when you know you are at success. And you have the difficult problem of deciding which ones can you take.
I can't wait for that day, Mr. Chair. So thank you. I look forward to working with
I know you'll make it happen, the three of you. Thank you. And that brings us to our discussion approval of select board member committee appointments and reappointments. If you would be willing, since he is not here, I would share with you Mr. Wells' interest as he sent in a communication. His current committees are Capital, of which he's been chair, the Fire Station Building Committee, of course. He's a liaison, but not voting. MPEG with Milton Access, and the Landing Subcommittees. He said he would like to remain on Capital, the Landing, where he has been deeply involved, at least in my 2 years on the board, in all types of contracts and related issues, and the Fire Station Building Committee, which we saw come to a great point in time tonight with our approval of the award and yielding the MPEG Milton access. So I just wanted to put that on the table for our discussion. Roxanne, may I share what your interests were? Or if you want to share them directly. Speak for yourself, young lady, you've got the floor.
Well, some of them, anyways, let me start. I had sent a note that I was interested in the master plan committee and the Milton Landing. I didn't know if there was one or two people on that because I had something that said two and then this here says one. So those were the two. And then, you know, if you needed someone on payment in lieu of taxes or I mean, it's pretty flexible. So, or MPEG or whatever, you know what I mean? So, but a master plan was one of the ones I was looking at.
Well, thank you for that. And I will yield to you my position on the Master Plan Implementation Committee. It will have a solid chair with Cheryl continuing, Cheryl Chagias, two members of that committee who go back to the development of the master plan. Elaine Benson, who's a new addition this past several months to the MPIC. And pending the decision, as you may remember in the warrant, there's a recommendation for 2 additional appointees, moving that from a 5-member to a 7-member committee. There are probably a half a dozen major categories of activities in there, but the last time I looked at the spreadsheet, I counted approximately 112. And that's pretty hard for 5 people to work on when one is serving on the planning board and one is serving on the select board. And the committee ultimately voted the majority to expand it. And I'm pleased that it's before the warrant, the town meeting, based upon the warrant recommendation. So I'd be happy to have you as a member if that's congruent with your expressed interest. Mr. Zulus.
I was just going to say, we had 2 members, I'm pretty sure, on the landing committee. I'm pretty sure it was Richard and Katie.
And that may be a possibility. It'd be great.
So anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
Let's see if that's not a possibility. And maybe what we do is wait until Rich is back on this one and do a little bit of the background homework and then have a dialogue at the next meeting. Would that be acceptable for the landing committee?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you want to defer all of these till Richard's back or do you feel comfortable?
No, I don't think we need to do that. I think we should make as many of the appointments as we can tonight. Okay. And then we may have some left over and we can work on that as we go through time. And we also note that several of these have designees. And we should think about our work and our time, responsibilities, and whether we should have somebody engaged from the community working with us or representing us, or it should be one of ourselves. I'll leave that to your good judgment. Mr. Zulus, did you have?
You know, I've had the opportunity to do things over the last few years, so I'm not wedded to anything. I mean, I've been involved with broadband kind of since the beginning, and I've been involved in school building kind of since the beginning, but I'm not wedded to them. I mean, the school building, you know, probably until we see where we're going to go with the land, probably a good idea to kind of see that through, and then maybe we can reevaluate. You know, but I'm not wedded to anything. I want to. People should have the opportunity. I've had the opportunity, so people should have the opportunity. And then I'll take what's left over. I'd rather not do policy. I've done that before, but you know. All right.
Well, Erin, I was just about to go to you and see if you had any preferences.
I I love policy. It's what I do for a living. So yes, I want policy till the nth degree.
Okay, to facilitate this, why don't we take a look at the motions? Okay, we've had a nice general introductory discussion. And the first motion is for the Affordable Housing Trust. Is there anyone who wishes to step forward for that one? It does not have to happen now.
I would be willing to step forward on that one if nobody else wants it. I don't want to step on toes. So
Okay.
I think it was former chair Conlon that was there. So if I would be more than happy to take that.
Then I will move to appoint Erin Bradley to the trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
You can abstain since
I don't know what do you do? Do you normally abstain?
Yeah.
Okay, I abstain.
Ms. Musto?
Unless you need to vote. If you don't need to.
And Mr. Doyle, yes. So now you can blame us. Move to appoint to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. We have a nomination for that committee.
I'll move to appoint Richard, since he wants it. If that's what he wants, I'll move to appoint Richard.
Is there a second?
Sure.
Musto?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No discussion visible. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. Proposed motion to appoint 2 members to the Finance Committee.
Who is on there currently?
Mr. Zulus and myself, with Mr. Zulus serving as chair. If I may, I'd like to make an observation that's a little bit in keeping with the comment that I made earlier when I sort of stepped aside as one person and saying that we've some rigorous finance work to do in a couple of years ahead, and a continuation with some of what's begun this year, particularly with external funding. We're going to lose Karen Preval at the end of the month, unfortunately. We have a new town administrator coming in. I'd like to suggest, if it's amenable to you, that the 2 incumbent members of the select board serving on the finance committee continue in their respective roles. Michael as chair and myself as well. So,
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move that. I'm happy to, I would love that. I'm happy to move to appoint members Mike Zulus and Arthur Doyle, Chair Doyle, to the Finance Committee.
Is that acceptable to you, Mr. Zulus?
It is, but let me say this. I think it's a great committee for when you're starting. You know, so I'm a little torn actually, because
okay. So I've been on the warrant committee.
Yeah,
recently.
that's right.
So
you both have. And
I have to, yeah.
But you know what you know, I just think, you know, the school committee sometimes they will post the meeting for the entire board so that, you know, 3 people can show up, right? That's what we'd have to do so that 3 people could be involved. I just want to, I think it's really good to get involved and, you know, and really know what's going on. You both know, because you both been on the warrant committee. So you know that, you know, where the finances go, that's kind of the engine of the engine of the town, right? So look, I'm happy to do it and happy to stay on, but I'm a little torn because I think it'd be great to, you know, kind of hand it off or hand part of it off, but maybe we can do it over time. Maybe we can look at it in 6 months and see where it is. That's why I'm a little torn, because I'd love to keep doing it and keep trying to add value that way, but at the same time, I don't want to get in anyone's way. So
I think that's well stated. And I wanted to say, when we were talking about the volunteer committees, that they're tremendous incubators for developing and growing our people. And I said to Roxanne in a conversation during the night that we've reorganized, that one of the things that I'm committed to is elevating, moving up, because the future of this community is going to depend upon that. And my own thinking, Mike, is that if I do this second year, depending upon the continuation with the select board, I would prefer that Aaron or Roxanne succeed me in that position. So we're aligned in our thinking.
So, Mr. Chair,
Bradley.
can I ask a question then about this? The meetings are Friday mornings at 7 a.m. Is this correct?
They can be.
Well, so that was to accommodate the school committee finance chair, because starting in the fall we try to get consensus with the school. So we started meeting. So we want to meet with the school finance subcommittee as much as possible to try to get on the same page, right? And the chair of the school committee finance subcommittee, that was the best time for her. And so that
that's
wasn't
not set in stone.
No. It's whatever the members decide, right? So Arthur and I have been doing it. We've been doing it at 8 on maybe Friday or Wednesday or whatever, just because that works for us. But it's whatever works, you know.
Okay. So Roxanne, if you want it, you can have it. But if not, I will be happy to. And I really feel bad doing this, Mike, but I will withdraw my motion and I would serve with Arthur on the finance committee. Mr. Chair, sorry. If that's what y'all want. I mean, I love finance and I know it's what makes the town run. So but I don't want to step on any toes.
No toe stepping taken.
I mean, if you want to
Roxanne?
do that, that's fine with me.
Thanks, Roxanne. But I'm not doing
Hopefully it's not 7 a.m.
I can't do 7 a.m. meetings, Mr. Chair. I cannot.
Right.
Mike, I have no difficulty if you want to stay on the committee with your experience, and I would move to another body. My time is going to be pretty busy if this several weeks is any signal.
It might be good for another year.
You have a tremendous
history, you know what I mean?
finance of the
stay,
town.
Do you want to think about it? Do you want to just think about it rather than just do it now? We can think about it.
Let's punt it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. We don't have to, as we said, we don't have to do them all tonight.
Yep.
So I withdraw my motion, Mr. Chair, and would like to move it till next meeting.
That's fine.
Cool.
And we decided that we would move to the next meeting, the Milton Landing Committee.
Yes.
That's agreed. Okay. Proposed motion to appoint 2 members of the board to the policy committee, one of whom would be Aaron Bradley.
Oh, I have a quick question. Did we do the master plan?
Not yet. Well, I don't think we've gotten to it. Did I scroll by it?
I think you scrolled by it.
Oh.
I was going in order.
Shame on me. Oh, there it is. Look at that. It was staring me right in the face all the time. So we have a proposed motion, and I will move to appoint Roxanne Musto to the Master Plan Implementation Committee. Is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Abstaining, Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you. And by the way, keep me on my toes. If I miss anything, I don't have the least bit difficulty with being told how to do something or where to go. Okay, so now we are with a motion to appoint someone to the payment in lieu of taxes body.
I don't mind doing that.
Roxanne,
I was on a similar one many years ago, so that's
okay.
Fine. I'll do that.
All right, I'll move to appoint Roxanne Musto to payment in lieu of taxes. Is there a second? Thank you, Aaron. Any comment?
You need.
Yes, I'm sorry. Were you asking a question or are you making a second?
I think you need 2 people, Mr. Chair. It says on the motion
That's
I
the
was just
policy
reading.
committee, 2 SB members.
No, payment in lieu of taxes. Oh, you're right. I'm very sorry.
That's
I
all
got
right.
confused. That's on me. I'm sorry, Mr.
You'll
Chair.
do
I
it.
second you.
Yeah. Not to worry. Okay, so I'll just reread the motion. Move to appoint Roxanne Musto to payment in lieu of taxes. Is there a second?
I second.
Aaron, seconded. Any comment? Hearing none. Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Abstaining, Roxanne?
Yes,
And
abstain.
Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you. And Suzanne's taking all of this down diligently, right? Because by morning, some of us may not remember some of these appointments. Okay, we're back to the policy committee. Ms. Bradley.
I would like that committee, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there another member who would like to serve on the policy committee?
How
I have
often do
enough
they meet?
personality for 2, if that counts.
Do you have any
I would-
information how often they meet or anything? Anybody?
It's really up to the members. In fact, Melinda and I didn't meet much. You know, we were kind of busy doing other stuff. We didn't meet a whole lot this year, and so that committee could use some energy and enthusiasm. We adopted a lot of policies at the end in April. A lot of the policies that you all received, but that committee could get some could have some energy. And I don't know if it's my energy at this point.
Well, since I moved off the master plan implementation committee, I'd be willing to put my foot in that water. So does somebody want to make a motion accordingly?
I'll make a motion that we approve Arthur and Aaron to the committee.
Second.
Any comment? Seeing none, Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
You have to vote because otherwise it'll.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Bradley.
Then yes.
Okay. You vote for me and I'll vote for you.
Okay, I vote for Arthur.
Ms. Musto. That's a way to get it.
Yeah, let's do it.
And Mr. Doyle.
Yes.
For Aaron. Thank you. Next is the broadband, the municipal broadband committee, and I will just say there is nobody in the town of Milton who has worked harder on this or knows more about it and has a vision as to where it has to go in the future than Michael Zulus. So with that statement made, I would move to appoint Mr. Zulus to the municipal broadband committee.
I'll second that.
Second, Roxanne. Any comment? Roll call on Mr. Zulus abstaining?
I think I can abstain, yeah.
Okay. Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle? Proposed motion, move to appoint to the Fire Station Building Committee.
Richard Walls.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint Richard. Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. Next is the School Building Committee.
So just FYI, we have 2 appointments to this committee. Currently, it's me and it's Glenn Hoffman, who is architect, adds a lot of value to the committee. It's a good appointment. He came from Tony Farrington back in the day.
And that's a designee of the select board.
That's right. There's 2 appointments and he's the designee. So.
And this is an annual appointment, so we would have to reappoint him.
Yes,
Would
that's
not?
probably right. That's probably right.
Okay, so that isn't called for here, although we could, I don't see any reason why we couldn't do it.
I think you have to have his name on the agenda in order to appoint him.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Not to be.
And it would be good
not
to
be a
consult. I think it's only fair to consult with them beforehand as well. So
Yes.
why don't we,
Can we reappoint Mr. Zulus tonight, though?
I don't see why not.
Perfect. Can I make that motion, Mr. Chair?
Yep, do it.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Musto.
I'll second it.
Okay, no comment. Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Musto,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. And Mike, could you reach out and ascertain his interest in continuing?
I will.
And then we'll make sure Suzanne, working with Lynn, that it's on the agenda for the next select board meeting.
Yep.
Good. Okay, we made good progress. Now to the Municipal Public Education and Government, or NPEG Access Board of Directors. Is there any nomination for this position this evening, or is this one to defer for a future consideration?
Oh, it was Richard Wells.
He was on it. He did not indicate preference to continue. Left it open.
I'll volunteer for that.
Okay, you'd be wonderful.
I think it's a fun one, Roxanne. I think that's a good one.
I'll try that, sure.
We saw, did I see a second from Erin?
I'll second.
Seeing no comment, Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
and Mr. Doyle, yes, with Ms. Musto abstaining. Thank you. Good work. What a team. Okay, now we have a series of liquor license approvals to be made with related proposed motions. Anybody want to take the lead on these, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve a one-day liquor license to Heidi Vaughn at the Forbes House Museum on June 11, 2022 for a fundraiser, Blow Ye Winds, an interactive sea shanty performance.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Musto,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve a one-day liquor license to the Forbes House Museum on July 21st, 2022 for Barn Fest, beer pop-up, love music, food vendor.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second that one.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Musto,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. Next motion.
Maybe that one will go viral.
Would you like to continue, Mike?
Sure, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve one-day liquor license to Michelle De Lima on May 28, 2022, with a rain date of May 29, 2022 for Hina Zure concert at Governor Hutchinson's Field, family picnic and concert.
Well read. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Roxanne, thank you. Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Musto,
Yes.
and myself, yes. And we are now with minutes. A motion to approve meeting minutes for March 14th, 2022 and March 16th, 2022. These had been deferred from a previous meeting. Mike had a couple of comments. No substantive change, Mike?
No, Mr. Chair, no substantive changes,
Okay.
tweaks.
So the motion has been made. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I don't know that Roxanne and I
You
can
can't.
vote on these.
No,
We
that's
were
right. The
present.
previous,
Weren't here.
they were not here.
So I'll make a suggestion, and you don't have to take it because we can wait till Richard comes. My view is you don't necessarily have to abstain if you trust Arthur and I to tell you that they do reflect what actually happened. And so I've done that. I voted on. I've voted on minutes where I wasn't there before because I've had to in boards that carried over because I trusted the person who moved them. But if there's any discomfort, we can just wait till Richard. We can wait. We can defer until Richard comes.
My comfort zone would be to defer until we have Richard back. That's agreeable. Is everybody in line with that or congruent with that? Makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda, now that we're beyond beer pop-ups and so on down the line, which was Very good. I love the creativity, don't you?
And the love, food and music too.
That's
Love
right.
that one.
Number 26 is deferred. At the present time, we will not take that up this evening. We would need both Anne Marie and Attorney Waugh for that particular item. So we can, at this point, go into executive session, and I will move for discussion strategy with respect to potential litigation relative to the final environmental impact assessment of the Federal Aviation Administration RNAV runway 4L at Boston Logan International Airport, and to adjourn from that meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zulus. Suzanne? You're on mute. I saw your hand go up. Will you look at me?
So sorry. Did that question just put us into executive session?
Not yet.
Okay, sorry. I'm
We have a
anxiously-
motion to go into executive session.
Okay,
It
sorry.
was seconded and voted.
Okay, I'll go back to being quiet.
Can I ask a quick
No,
question?
please ask questions anytime. Mr.
Do
Zulus?
we need to figure out when our next meeting is before we go into executive session?
Oh, thank you.
'Cause we missed a few little things here, so I just
We
didn't know
missed
if
a
we needed
bunch.
to do those.
Yeah, I
first.
missed. I have nothing to add on the chair's report. Does anybody have anything from a committee? Mr. Zulus, we've covered the finance.
No report, Mr. Chair.
I was going by the agenda on the screen rather than the agenda in front of me. That'll teach me, won't it? Future agenda dates, very important. We mentioned the necessity of doing that earlier in the meeting. So let's take a look at our calendars. Today is Wednesday, the 11th. Our traditional pattern is every 2 weeks on Wednesday. So how would Wednesday, the 25th look? Mr. Zulus?
The only reason we may want to meet next week is just on that
School, right,
Article
and
34.
some of the appointments.
Yeah, that's the only reason, just so we can get it to the warrant committee with enough time before town meeting.
And for the benefit of Aaron and Roxanne, every once in a while, we have to have an emergency meeting of the select board. One gets called because of the imperative nature of business that might come before us. I don't know if you've seen that happening in the past. This past year, I think we may have set a record for select board meetings. Somebody ought to have a count made and compare it with preceding years. What do you think, Mike? That was
Not even close. The COVID year, we were meeting every week for about 6 months.
the year before. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we can put those two in a category unto themselves. Okay.
Actually, 2 to 3 times a week. The first month or so, we were meeting like 2 to 3 times a week because we had a lot of emergency things to do. So yeah, that was
all the
really
CARES
year.
money appropriations and
That
so
was
on.
really the year of the meetings.
Okay, Wednesday, the 18th, 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
And are we Zoom? Is it a Zoom meeting?
I
assume
think,
it is.
considering the environment and the decision that we just made at
I assume it is.
this meeting with respect to the annual town meeting, that would probably be the best course of action.
Okay.
We have agreement on that. I don't want to speak for everybody.
Yes.
Thank you. A future meeting date after the 18th? It would seem to be June 1. Does that make sense? That's a Wednesday again.
And that'll be the Wednesday before town meeting.
Town
So
meeting.
That'll be good. Yeah, that would probably be good.
What would you think of leaving it at that for now?
Yes.
So we have those 2 dates. The
good.
18th of May and the 1st of June. Thank you. Anything else I missed? And now that the chair will read the motion to go into executive session one more time, with the addition of adjourning from the executive session. The discussion strategy with respect to potential litigation relative to the final environmental impact assessment of the Federal Aviation Administration, RNAV, runway 4L at Boston Logan International Airport, and to adjourn from executive session. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Mr. Zulus.
If I may, Mr. Chair, did you say that item 26 is not ripe for discussion?
Yes, that's correct. It's deferred.
Thank
Yeah. We would need both our interim town administrator and council related to that for that meeting.
And are we taking up item 27 in executive session, which
Yes,
is?
we are.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
thank
exactly what we're voting on. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Precisely. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Roll call, Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Musto,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, yes. Thank you very much. And now, Suzanne, we can lock and